Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Unfortunately, Josh is having some technical difficulties right now, but he'll join us as soon as he can. Today we have Matthew Jackson of the Paraholics. So, how's it going, Matt?
Man, it's going good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good.
So, what you been working on lately?
Well, first off, I have to just point out here you are in this like dark, menacing cave, and I'm in this. It looks like daylight here, and it's 11 p.m. in Indiana, and you look like we should trade places.
Yeah, I just keep things a little dark, and yeah, that's my ambience that I set up here.
Oh, I know.
This place is a little creepy haunted, so I keep in touch with that. So
Yeah, no, that's cool. See, recently, I don't have a project that I'm working on currently. I did at the beginning of the year. I did an 8 week long ITC experiment where I did 8 weeks of controlled sessions where I asked the same basic questions week after week and added some trigger objects. And also, along with the set questions I would have, I'd also introduce like two bonus questions every week, and then one written question that I would not verbally communicate when I was doing my sessions. I would just like lay the paper out and ask for a response to that I got responses to. So I called it my 2021 Evils ITC cabin sessions. Um, Evil Ogleville. Evil is like a nickname that I had for myself when I first started Paraholics back in like 2011, something like that. And so I just kind of stuck with that for fun. And it seems like I get addressed as evil quite a bit through my session. So it's kind of, it never really took off with the people that I talked to, but the spirits seem to resonate with them. Either that or they're just calling me evil with an I instead of evil like Knievel. I've never quite figured that out, but so yeah, that it was a real interesting. I never tried controlled sessions before, and I know you do them like every week, every
yeah.
Saturday night. Which I've watched some of your sessions, and so it was something that really never occurred to me because when I first started doing ITC sessions, it was always on location. I
Mhm.
always went to a place. I never thought about just trying to draw in and work within the same radio signal. So it was real interesting for me to try it because where I live, I really have bad reception. And I had gotten a Steve's box sometime before Christmas, and I was surprised. I have a room down in my basement that I jokingly call the ITC bunker,
Mhm.
and it's in a basement in a rural Indiana on a hilltop. And I just really can't get radio reception. But this one Steve's box was able to get more signal than I'd ever had before with anything I'd
Mhm.
ever messed with. And I was just playing around with it, and it seemed like it was talking to me. So that's what inspired me to want to try the controlled sessions. And so yeah, that's what I did.
No, that's awesome because yeah, like you said, I mean, yes, I'm lucky to be able to set up a controlled environment.
Hmm.
I get no reception here either. Believe it or not, I get
Really.
maybe four stations on FM. AM, nothing. So what I do is it was a little project.
Mm.
Everything in this location is a little project. So I had
Right.
to run a line so I ran a wire and down to the ground of the house.
Hmm.
And so basically I use that and then I clip it onto my antenna and boom. Then I start not only I mean I pick up everything now.
That's hilarious.
But still AM it's still garbage because I mean
Yeah.
it's a different type of antenna. So but yeah, it's crazy. But
Hmm.
no, with your experiments with doing everything in a controlled environment, it's a totally different beast. And like what you were saying, I mean, that's awesome that somebody else is doing that. And I give you props for doing that.
No, thanks. What really caught my attention is I would set the box to a very fast sweep.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go back and you watch the progression of the videos, I mean, even from the get go, I was getting like full on like sentences and phrases in like the same voice, same tonality. And when you listen to the sweep, I mean, there was a lot of static. And I was almost to the point like, where does this start to blur the line between like a regular ghost box communication and almost like direct radio voice? Because I'm just like basically sweeping white noise the majority of the time. And so and a lot of the responses, when you're listening to a radio sweep and you have the chatter coming through, some of the phrasing that I would get would be like a different tonality. It
Mm-hmm.
was like almost below sometimes what you would normally hear radio, or sometimes it would be like above what you would
Mm-hmm.
hear come out of the radio. It was almost like disconnected. And especially since there wasn't much radio chatter coming through, I found it really, really, I was impressed, but kind of disturbed at the same time. Like, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah. And it's funny how you mentioned that because um, I pick up a lot more undertone
Hmm.
than the radio frequency coming through. And it's funny because with me doing everything live and in a controlled environment, and then people are tuning in, saying, "Oh, this is just radio frequency," and I said, "Yeah, but listen to it." And so I was getting a lot of skeptics coming in,
Hmm.
and just like bashing me. And I said, "You know what? Okay, how can I change this up?" So instead of getting pissed off, I got motivated, and I said, "You know what? I have a reverse circuit somewhere that I threw in a box years ago. Where is that damn thing that I was playing with a long time ago?" So I broke it out. I started adjusting it. Well, I put it back together and I set it up. And with reverse speech, it's total opposite. So,
Hmm.
a lot of people will go with, a slower speech to try to pick up more. No, with reverse, it's everything that you learned about forward speech. It's
Hmm.
opposite. So you
Right.
have to run at something at really fast for you to pick anything up. The slower you go, the more garbled it is, and you're
Hmm.
like, this is just gibberish coming through.
Yeah.
But then you hit that sweet spot, and it's like, holy crap! Now I'm hearing
Hmm.
full sentences coming through. So anyway,
Yeah, I have a couple boxes that do reverse speech, and that's probably my favorite go-to right now. I couldn't use my reverse speech box in my controlled sessions because I had no signal with it. But that's kind of been my baby for the past year or so, is really working with that reverse speech box, because when something comes through and it's just undeniably clear, and it's reversed, it makes it so much more validated and
mhm.
credible, as something that's really kind of hard to explain.
Yeah,
So
no, no, exactly.
and your reverse speech box that you've been running on Saturday nights, I think that sounds fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been building those radios for a long time.
Hmm.
For It's actually 3 years now. Um, but for me, just to and the thing is I'll never sell a reverse circuit. That's something
Hmm.
that I talked to Steve Holte about because it was a circuit that he worked on for years ago, and then he stopped working with it. And I just told him, look, I'll never sell a reverse speech box. This is for my personal use only. This is going
Hmm.
to be for my experiments, and that's what I'm doing. And and I'm glad that other people or people like yourself are starting to do more controlled environment ITC research,
Hmm.
which is starting to it's a totally different beast, and it's something that I think a lot more people I think should do, just to kind of help with the field a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I mean, this is still such there's not a lot of people that do a lot of research. I mean, yes, a lot of people do ghost box sessions on location, things like that.
Hmm.
But to really get down and do the things like what you're doing, it's because I watched the video or the documentary that you did, and it was amazing. Just in there with what you were doing,
Hmm.
And like you said, you had the piece of paper and you just said, can you say, this, and or what does this say? And then you're getting validation. It's just amazing.
Yeah, hello, Joshua.
We can't hear you.
No audio.
How's that?
Yeah.
Better.
3 minutes
Good
before we
evening.
went live, my internet decided to go down. Well, the whole neighborhood. So that was a wonderful surprise. Glad to join you guys.
Hey, good seeing you, man.
Good seeing you.
So we're just getting caught up a little bit, talking to Matt about, some of the things he was working on, and he was talking about his controlled environment sessions that he's been doing, things like that.
Please continue. I don't want to interrupt. Please continue what you guys were discussing.
The thing that you were talking about with the controlled sessions, it never even dawned on me to do control sessions until, I told you I got that radio from Steve Holte, but it was actually the Ghost Box Talk during the pandemic when the world was shut down. I started tuning into their show, and Bruce was really big on these controlled sessions at home, and he had a good argument for trying it. And I was so frustrated that I didn't have a radio that would get a good enough signal to even try it. So when I got that Steve's box, and I was just shocked that I was getting anything through it, I thought, well, hey, man, here's my time. So I've made a real diligent effort. I tried to make it about the same time every week, for that 8-week span. And it was really interesting to me because it seemed like everything was really chatty at first. And as I continued throughout the process towards the end of the 8 weeks, it seemed more reluctant to communicate with me. It seemed more put out with me. And I wasn't getting as good of responses, I felt like, but the responses I got just seemed to be crappy, like,
yeah.
it was like, okay, we're done with you and your tricks. Move on down the road. We're tired of you. It's kind of the vibe that I felt like I was starting to get. And no matter what I would try to spring or bring different to the session, I was still getting great responses, but it didn't flow as much as what it did, I feel like, early on.
But like with what you said, you gave yourself a nickname, right, years ago.
Yeah.
And they were picking up on that. So
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because they do pick up on certain little things or sometimes you get called nicknames that you or somebody close to you are the only ones that know that nickname. Mm-hmm. And for them to pick up on that, it gives you even that much more validation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy.
One of my favorite moments in the 8-week sessions is when the week that I brought out the petrified batfish that my grandmother had given me when I was, like in the first grade, and I've kept this thing all these years, and it's just ugly as heck. Scares my grandson to death. And I brought that out during the session, and my question was, who gave me this? And the response I got back was, "Grandma who?" And
they had trouble with the last name, right?
Yeah, my grandmother's last name that gave it to me was Scroggum.
Right.
And that's hard enough to say, with my mouth, let alone through a ghost box. And it was kind of like, "Grandma who?" Like, do I really have to say that? And to me, I found that just incredible because, obviously it was like, it knew it was, I don't know, in the Akashic records or whatever. And it pulled out grandma. It knew it was a grandmother. And I just found that incredible.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
You mentioned in your documentary that they might have had trouble pronouncing the last name.
Yeah.
but
Right.
There was an attempt or an acknowledgement that it was indeed from your grandmother. And that's what was so amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
I really enjoyed watching everything you did, not only your evidence in the experiment, but the production you put together and how you summarized, at least in the most recent documentary I saw, the 8 weeks or the 8 sessions, and then discussed your theory. The one thing that stood out to me the most, which was just still rings like a bell, is when you asked them, how are you communicating with us in a more specific way? And I heard very clearly, the mind. Yeah. The mind. And that seems to be more of what we're almost pointing our attention to is, okay, all of these radios work and all of this equipment seems to work, or they can manipulate it somehow. But what is that common thread that is beyond the equipment? Maybe some people will say it's energy or psi energy, but the mind. And I found that so interesting because they said that so clearly in the response you got.
Yeah, and that's what I've talked about. Well, I even mentioned it in the little film I did. The wrap up was, we don't even really understand the potential of our thoughts and how we project. And I almost think that, maybe some of those answers, like, obviously I knew that the batfish came from my grandma, right? And so maybe, I knew the answer that I was looking for. And so maybe it was just having a hard time picking up on exactly what I was projecting in that moment to try to, bring it through and give it to me as a response. And, that's why when I talked about the intention, perception, and the phenomena wrap up at the end of the video, I just really think that we play into it way more than what we probably even can comprehend.
Well stated. And that was proof over at least you could see over the 8 weeks of the 8 sessions that you did, that indeed, every time you asked a question, even pertaining when the lights were out, what color shirt am I wearing? Or when you weren't wearing a shirt at all.
Wasn't that crazy?
And I couldn't believe that because no way.
Yeah.
And ahead of time, I thought to myself, he's probably not wearing a shirt. And lo and behold, you weren't. And they didn't answer right away. And then they said, no shirt. I went, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please go ahead. Continue.
Well, last summer, when the pandemic was raging, I had the opportunity to get a hold of a Frank's box. A friend of mine by the name of Philip Wyatt, who's an ITC researcher out of Atlanta, he was dying to get a Frank's box, right? And one came available, and he was not in a position to grab onto it when it was there. So I made a deal with him. It's like, listen, I'll grab the Frank's box for you. I'll hold on to it till you resolve the situation and with your situation, and then it's yours. So I had a few months of owning this Frank's box. And I was on my back porch just monkeying around with it one day. So I was outside and I was getting fairly good signal. And I caught it on video. And I just for, a whim, I asked, what color shirt am I wearing? And it said a yellow shirt. And the surprising thing about that is I never wear yellow. I got this gag shirt that it has like an alien and picking up a guy in the desert with like a cactus and everything, and it says on a dark desert highway, and it's this bright yellow shirt, and it's a yellow shirt, and I was like, holy cow. And I turned the camera around like I'm wearing a freaking yellow shirt. Right. So I just thought that was kind of a fun little on the moment way of trying to get some sort of like credible response through the ghost box. So that's why I carried that through the cabin sessions. And I definitely purposely did not wear a shirt that one time just to see if it would throw it off,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. And I wanted to point out too, if you could discuss this, I know a lot of people, we will hear numbers through the ghost box constantly. Some people believe they're angel numbers or they're communicating to us through math. Others think it's just how many people maybe are listening at the time. But you keep getting someone by the name of 7, not necessarily the number 7. What is the significance of that? Have you researched any more about that? Who is 7?
Are you guys familiar with April Slaughter, ITC researcher? She wrote a book called Reaching Beyond the Veil. Her book.
The title of the book sounds familiar.
Yeah, she is fantastic. If you ever get a chance, she used to be an editor, I think, for the original Ghost Hunters magazine when TAPS had their own magazine. She started out as an editor for them, and she's also an ITC researcher. Fantastic.
I'll have to.
You should reach out. Yeah,
you need to reach out and read her material. Absolutely.
Yeah, and she years ago, I can't remember if I was talking to her or if maybe it's actually in her book. She would always talk about this entity that would come through and call itself 7. And I just found that interesting, but I never had that happen to me personally until I started doing the cabin sessions.
Right.
And so it definitely caught my attention because it was like saying its name was 7. And I reached out to April and I asked her, like, when you've been in contact with 7, does it come across as more of like a female or male presence, or how does it come across to you? And she said that predominantly, I think she said female, which I always heard it as like a male when it was coming through my box. But then when you start listening, you start looking up the number 7, almost every ancient form of mysticism or every form of major religion, Christianity, there's like so much significance to the number 7 as well. And it's like, archangels and demon princes in hell, and oh my God, it goes on and on and on. And so I found it fascinating and definitely worth noting, because it definitely grabbed my attention, and that's something that I would really like to delve into and study more.
Yeah, because I noticed you got those responses in that recent documentary I viewed, and then your most recent one at the cemetery.
Cemetery,
so
yeah.
I'm going, okay, now I've heard 7 a few times, not as a number, but as a name coming through for you. And I'm thinking, okay, there's got to be something behind this. And
yeah, I agree.
But
I was shocked in my latest video when I was reviewing it and I heard 7 again. I'm like, really? Because I hadn't heard it since the cabin sessions, and then it came up then. So I think it's definitely pointing me somewhere to start digging. So,
well, and on kind of coming full circle with that, I really enjoyed your theory at the end, because a lot of the times I think it's too easy to take for granted, or as humans, to become complacent in our very localized theories, or just, okay, this is what's going on, we're talking to spirit. A lot of people just kind of settle for that, and we just kind of push forward in that, I don't want to call it a narrow mindscape, but at the same time, I feel like the best thing to do is always ask questions. And that's what I liked most about your documentary. Is the point is don't settle or become complacent on any one theory that maybe the larger masses have accepted. Keep questioning, keep being inquisitive. And that's what your research showed at the end. Is you said, you know what, these could be tricks. Whatever this, I'll call it intelligent consciousness for a lack of better words, however we want to view it, obviously has some kind of intelligence, because it knows so much about us.
Completely.
But what
either
if it's
that
feeding?
Or it's taking it from us in the moment,
Right. And what if it is a phenomena that's simply extracting our life knowledge and our, everything about us, and essentially just repeating things to us in vocal tones and frequencies that are familiar to us. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is you're reminding everyone to keep questioning, keeping inquisitive, and because we don't know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, I really find more comfort in dealing with things that are so big from the perspective of don't know, move forward. Just keep asking and asking and asking, and don't settle, because I think often when we settle, that's when we wind up looking foolish or being wrong, and I figure as long as I project myself in any experiment as that I do, as I'm not an expert, I'm just curious, and I just want to know things, that I'm not going to get myself pigeonholed into a place where I really don't feel comfortable. And all this really started clicking in my head several years ago. Before the cabin sessions, I had a chance, when I was at the St. Albans Sanatorium. I don't know if you guys have heard of that place. It's been on a few of the TV shows. It's in Radford, Virginia, and just an incredible place. I mean, it's so cool the way it sets up on this hill overlooking this valley. And of course, there's all kinds of haunted folklore associated with it. So I've had 2 trips there, and the most disturbing story and the most disturbing moments that I ever had in that sanatorium was in this room that they call Donald's room. And the story basically goes that Donald was either like a custodian or an orderly in the sanatorium years ago, and he raped and murdered a young boy that had been dropped off at the hospital. And the story goes that this particular room they call Donald's room is where he stays, whether it was his office or whatever it was, but he's attached to this room. And he also holds the spirit of the disembodied boy that he murdered, named Jacob there. And when you go in and you talk to Donald is like the most vulgar, disgusting, sarcastic, hilarious ghost, spirit, whatever I've ever came into contact with. I mean, he will cuss you out. He will say just the most vulgar things to shake you up. But at the same time, there's a little bit of humor with some of the stuff he says because it's just so over the top ridiculous. And then you can ask to speak to Jacob, and a voice of a little boy will eventually come through. And it's heartbreaking. It's really disturbing, but there's no historical record of any of it happening. Nothing. There is nothing to tie this story to with history. And so I'm like, well, is it true? So what's perpetuating, what's making all this happen? And I put a video on St. Albans when I was there the last time, and I posted it on YouTube. And a friend of mine by the name of Gene Caswell, who was in my latest video, he listened to the video after I posted it, and he goes, "You missed a response." And it was when I was talking to Donald and I asked to talk to Jacob. And you guys know how sometimes you'll catch a response and it's almost like between the spirits, like the spirits are talking and you get their part of their conversation. And when I'm asking for Jacob, there's a response there that says, "Go be him."
Oh.
And that hit me like a bomb. I took the video down and I redid it after I heard that, because it's like, am I just being toyed with here? Are these like actors, and they're just fulfilling my expectation,
Right.
and perpetuating this narrative that's not even true. And
Right.
so that's when the beautiful, like, tragic history and haunted and put a nice little bow on it. That's what makes the paranormal happen really started to unravel in my head. It's like, I think there's a way bigger picture to all this than we're actually seeing. So we need to find a way to kind of step back and really look at what the possibilities are. And so that was kind of the beginning of the end of my sanity.
Matt, that's a good point, because that type of question, or I mean, that type of response that you heard, "Go be him," you're thinking to yourself, wait, someone's acting like a 6 or 7-year-old boy. They're tricking me.
Yeah.
And this is just I'm just the fool or the scapegoat in someone's big joke or someone.
Exactly.
I can understand that. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And
then even some of the responses that Jacob would say did not sound like the responses of a boy who met like a tragic end and like for example, the 1930s or 40s, and some of the things that he would say, that's like, I don't know about that. I don't think a boy at his age in that era would have said something that kind of gross or sexual, just kind of gave you this creepier vibe,
Right.
It was more unnerving,
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that,
yeah.
And there again, we just don't know what we're dealing with. And that's what I think we have to constantly remind ourselves. We've had technology in general for 100 years. I mean, real serious heavyweight technology. And we've had ghost boxes for 20. We've been using the radio for about 50 to 60, maybe somewhere around that much time. We're in the pre-infancy of the infancy of the infancy. I mean, it's
agree.
Too soon to call. And I think a lot of people are taking this and running with it, saying, we can talk to your deceased mother. I just need $250. And that's,
or the new celebrity that just, met an untimely end.
Right. And
no, exactly.
Yeah. Well,
it's funny because, like, I was just talking to somebody and they were like, "Oh, just wait till, AI devices start coming out and people start making money off of that."
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That'll be the next thing. I really think that, like I said at the end of my summary for the cabin sessions, regardless, and I don't try to be like a Debbie Downer and all this, because I think it's fascinating, but, regardless of what is perpetuating it, even if it's solely coming from us and it's just us and that's it, even that is incredible if that's what it would turn out to be. I mean, that's mind-blowing in itself.
Yes.
And so that's why I kept stressing, it's like, guys, the phenomena is real. There is no doubt in my mind that there is something behind it, but just keep an open mind and keep your ears open and just look at the possibilities.
Yeah, no, exactly. But see, and then that's the thing, like with what you're doing, what I'm doing, we're in a controlled environment. We're trying to do this. And actually, I'm streaming it, you're recording it, but we're doing the same thing. We're doing the same type of research, and we're saying, look, we're in controlled environments. We're not, we understand what we're picking up, or, we understand the stations that are coming through, but you have to listen deeper. I mean, listen harder. You're hearing, with what you even said, you're hearing other voices come through layered over those radio signals coming through, or under those radio signals coming through. There's no way that if you're listening to a broadcast radio, how are you picking up the broadcast and other voices underneath that? There's no way.
Right. Yeah.
Which are answering what color shirt you have on. I mean,
exactly.
The statistical probability of it being just coincidence every single time for thousands of people around the world, I can't even compute that number.
And the one where it said light blue, and I was wearing like this light blue shirt.
Right.
I mean, it's so specific.
Right. It's one thing if the weather report said blue skies today, but it literally said light blue very clearly after your question, and after it had already answered very intelligent questions. And they were even answering questions off your piece of paper you were holding up. You weren't even reading them out loud. They were reading the question on the paper and answering it, which, the phenomena, as you said, is real. And I think that's what we can all agree on. And I think we can all agree on what we need to do is just keep asking questions, keep pushing forward, asking questions without assuming anything still.
I think asking questions and, the ability to do that is the thing that makes us all distinctly human. And I think to me, it blows my mind when I meet someone who seemingly has no questions. I'm like, huh? What? And it's like, how can you just like not have questions?
Right.
I mean, because every day I'm surprised by something. I'm always digging and looking and Googling and curious about whatever hops in my head at that moment. But some people just I have friends that I can't even talk to about this stuff. I mean, you could tell they just like they
tune out.
Or totally. They do not want to face the possibilities. And I think a lot of that's maybe fear-based. I don't know, but
it could be. It could be fear-based. It could just not make sense. I mean, I've tried to describe what my research is to certain people and I get, that's cool. Where do you want to go eat lunch? And I'm like, did you just hear what I told you that? And it kind of, they probably think, oh, it's some audio engineering talk, whatever. And let's just go eat. And I'm thinking to myself, you're either totally cool with this or you know something I don't know, or you didn't hear what I said. So I don't know, but I've gotten some pretty strange responses to that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely.
But no, I think a lot of people are kind of, I think that they are afraid. I think it is more afraid because I don't know the reasons why. Or they're just like, you know what? I don't get it. I don't understand what you're even talking about. I don't even want to go there.
Yeah. Because the possibilities of why we're here, where we came from, where we're going, those things seem to be like the most important things to consider versus what are you going to do with your investments? Well, it doesn't matter when you're dead. I mean, let's talk about what this all means. It's just, it's kind of just funny how, priorities and perspective just is so different with so many different types of people,
Right.
So, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I was raised in a very strict religious religion. And I have found that the more like strict and what do I want to say, dogmatic maybe a faith is, the less questions you have because they have all the answers. So anything you might bring up, they lay it out. And it wasn't until when I got older, I had certain questions that I found out I was not allowed to ask. And as far as like, towards like spirituality, the Bible and so on and so forth. And so I think that has just like propelled and perpetuated, me for the rest of my life. So when I came across, I had my first big paranormal experience And then I got interested in researching that. And then I was introduced to ITC work. It has just all kept growing. So to me, it's been, I mean, I'm amazed at, the technical side of this and the work that, guys like you do, Joshua. And I find all that, I mean, the builders, Steve Holte, he's always like rattling off, some different transmitter or whatever. And it's just like, I had a taco for lunch. That's what I know. But it's still, to me, it's always been more of like a spiritual path, spiritual pursuit, a type of curiosity, more so than even like the gadget and the gear side of it. But at the same time, I've tried to be very careful as far as like the way that I present what I do and the tools that I use. And now with the introduction of like the reverse speech and the different experiments that I've been doing that way, to me, it just has lent itself to that much more. So it just, it's just me moving on down that path.
No, exactly. So here's a funny story. Now, you talked about the male with the little boy. Mm-hmm. My story is opposite. So, like I said, I live in a home that is very active. There's 3 spirits here: a little girl, older woman, and an older gentleman. The little girl I experienced almost immediately after I moved in. Same with the gentleman. But the little girl has always been very vocal. So when I first started doing my controlled sessions, just before that, maybe maybe a couple of months before that even, I was picking her up a lot on my ghost box. Once we started doing the live sessions, the first night, she came through so much. Then all of a sudden there was a male that seemed like he was trying to suppress her. Mm-hmm. And he would say his name was Ed. And anytime he would come around her, she would stop. Or she would try to come through, he would suppress her. It took months for me. I mean, I was trying to get her name for a long time. Then finally, eventually she said her name is Emma. So anytime Ed comes through, you'll hear Emma coming through, or vice versa. So it's just really strange on how the two. But I did some research because next door used to be the Church of Science, the Christian Church of Science, and then the house that I live in was the Sunday school and the nursery. So, kind of find out, there was a girl that passed there. It was under weird circumstances. Come to find out, there was a lot of bad things going on next door. So, and somebody else was picking up on that. A psychic talked to me kind of like offline. And I was like, wait, how do you know all this? Because we started, I was told that there was some underground tunnels. There was like a little bunker that was down below. And it was weird because before I even found out about that, I went back there to get my dog's ball and I saw these posts coming out. And you look down and it was like just PVC piping. It looked like they were being used as air ducts. And I was like, that's weird. Why, there was a couple of them. So come to find out, there was like an underground bunker there. And that's what those PVC pipes were. There was some tunneling down there and things like that. So, so I've picked up on all of that, or I gathered all that information later. So
what do you think that is? Because that seems to be a common theme with different locations that I've been to, and then different stories like what you just told me that you hear from other investigators, that there is a place where there's like a dominant entity that controls or tries to quell the other entities that are there. What do you think that is? I mean, because that is just something that seems to be a very common reoccurring topic or subject.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that was one of the males there that was torturing some of the people there next door. And he's now coming through and doesn't want the story told. And he thinks maybe the little girl's going to expose him. I don't know. That's the only thing that I could think of.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. You just hear that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me to live on the property now and me being an
Right.
investigator, and it was funny when I went to my landlord and I just asked her, you know, have you experienced anything in the house? And then she was like, okay, what did you see? And then I told her, and she said, do me a favor, go look at the picture over on the mantle. So I walked over there and I was like, that's him. And it was actually her husband that passed. His name's Jerry. And I said, does he smoke? And she said, he smoked cigarettes, he smoked a pipe, he smoked cigars. And I said, did he walk with really heavy footsteps? And she said, yeah, he always wore cowboy boots because he was always working in the yard. And I said, was he kind of grumpy? And she said, yeah. And so I was like, that's everything that I hear, because I would hear male's disembodied voice, and he sounded like he was very grumpy. And anytime I smell his cigarette smoke or tobacco smoke, I hear it's associated with footsteps. I was doing my show and I was smelling, and when I smell cigarette smoke, I'm affected by it because I don't like the smell of smoke. So I kind of get choked up a little bit, almost like it's hard to breathe. And then I started hearing footsteps because right in front of where I'm sitting, there's basically the wall. And then when you walk up to my front door, there's almost like a boardwalk, like a beach boardwalk. So it's kind of cool because they built walkways, but they're raised platforms. So I heard his footsteps walking on the planks, and I was like, oh, there goes Jerry. But this was like at 2:00 in the morning, and there's nobody here because I live on a dirt road, and my neighbors never come out. You can come into my house at 2:00 in the afternoon, and it's quiet. You can hear a pin drop outside, or just all you're going to hear is the birds chirping. So
that's cool.
But yeah.
After I'd had a couple paranormal experiences, but in the window of time before I started actively investigating claims, I lived in a house that was haunted. And it was one of those things, because I lived there, I definitely did not want to entertain it or entertain the thought of me living there at the time, And my son at the time was like 3 or 4, and we had a dachshund. Of course, dachshunds are not very tall. And it was an old, Victorian style home where he was too short. He couldn't see out the windows to see people on the sidewalk or anything like that. And there was one afternoon where my son was sitting on the kitchen cabinets and in the kitchen with his mom, and they were working on a craft or something like that. And all of a sudden, our dachshund just went hysterical, got super aggressive, and it scared my wife. And my son jumped, and the dog actively chased something through the lower level of the house, and then ran halfway up the staircase and just stopped, like it disappeared. And of course, my wife was like, "What was that?" And my son said, "Oh, that was the ghost." And she's like, "The ghost?" She goes, "Yeah, that man." And my wife said, "What did the man look like?" And he said, "Like on TV, but real fuzzy." And of course, I got home from work and I heard that story. It's like, well, let's just not talk about that.
Right.
Wow.
But in the modern, the me of now, man, I lived in a playground. I would have creeped my family completely out if I would have been, geared up like I am now for that type of thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, your wife hears this story from your son, and then all of a sudden you're gearing up, and she's like, "What is going on in this family?"
Well, yeah, she definitely would not have appreciated, what I would have brought to the table, given the opportunity now.
Of course.
Yeah.
Especially when you have such young children in the home, your first instinct is protect them. You don't want any shenanigans or anything stupid going on in the home. So, you're just like, all right, let's just brush this under the rug and move forward.
Well, my son is 20.
Okay,
and he still lives at home.
Right.
And he's getting ready to, hopefully he's taken off at some point out of the nest, but I'm not holding my breath right now. But anyhow,
he's still a baby. He's still young. He's got time. He's okay.
Well, last summer I had the opportunity to acquire a real human skeleton, and it
was in your documentary.
It came out of a Knights of Pythias temple. And I received multiple threats from my wife and from my son on how I better not bring that thing home. And so, of course, I'm going to bring it home.
Oh boy.
And unfortunately, the skeleton had been. I think people broke into the abandoned temple and they tried to just steal the skull. So the skull is damaged; it's broken in about 5 pieces. So when I went originally to get the skeleton, I decided, well, I'm just going to take the skull and try to have it repaired. And, I really want to give it to like a anthropology or forensics department and see what they might be able to learn from the specimen. And so I brought the skull home and I didn't tell them that part. And then a few days into it, I felt so guilty. I mean, like an insurmountable amount of guilt having separated the skull from the rest of its body.
Right.
I went back for more. And next thing you know, I have the whole thing here and I hid it. I hid it in my basement where my son sleeps.
Oh,
and
perfect.
Yeah. And so in my mind, this is how I worked this out. This is how I rationalized it. I thought, well, if I bring it home and no paranormal activity like spikes in the house after like a few months, I'm in the clear because there's no energy attached to it. So I just
until
had to hide
someone
it.
finds out.
I just had to hide it long enough. And so anyhow, my son, who is like, one of the most vocal about you're not bringing that skeleton into the house. A few weeks after I had it in the basement, and of course he didn't know it was there, we went on a hike together and we started talking about the paranormal and just different theories and so forth. And he brings up, even though he'd been with me on multiple investigations and he'd seen stuff and experienced things, he just really didn't know if he believed in ghosts anymore. And I said, yeah, I said, good,
yeah,
because I got something to tell you, man. He goes, so that skeleton, you've been sleeping with it.
Oh, I can't.
And the look on his face was like, you're like, what you talking about, Willis?
Right. All of a sudden, that talk of I don't believe in ghosts anymore, going, oh my gosh, it's actually been down there with me. Oh,
but I was proud of him, though. He didn't tell his mother that I had the entire skeleton in the house.
That could have been bad.
Yeah. She actually found it later because I have it in a trunk, and
You're still alive.
Yeah, I'm still alive. And at one point, we were doing some home remodel projects, and we were getting into the storage area. She sees this trunk back there, and she turns and looks at me. She goes, "What's in there? A dead body?" And I said,
"Yes."
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, I can't believe you're still breathing and alive here with us to do the show today, Matt.
I'm living on the edge. I'm living on the edge.
You
here in
are
Indiana,
living on the edge, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, then that's exactly the one that was in your documentary that you had mentioned, and they actually responded to through the radio and acknowledged in the it was in the trunk, I believe they said, right? Or
well, I have it wrapped in bags.
It was in bags.
It was placed in and it said it was in bags.
That's right.
And I thought it was interesting. It identified, I think, a couple times as a woman, which if you saw the stature of the specimen, it's articulated, so it's put together like you'd see in a science classroom. It's very small. It has to be either like a teenager or a very petite woman. And one of my favorite moments was it said it doesn't like music.
It doesn't like music.
Doesn't like music. I was like, what can you tell me about the skeleton in this cabin? And it says doesn't like music, which I thought was just bizarre.
No arts and entertainment for the skeleton family. Don't entertain the skeleton.
No, just stand up only. Just no music.
Right. Wow, that's incredible. That's interesting how even your son, being 20 years old, kind of thought, even though I've experienced these things and I've seen these things with your dad, I still don't know what's going on. And I like his perspective on that he can almost testify to, yes, I've experienced interesting things, but I just don't know if I believe in ghosts, or maybe it's something else that we're just not thinking about.
Yeah, he was really into reading about quantum physics at that time. And he was open to just different ideas of, maybe we're just listening or hearing, with a thin veil, hearing our next door neighbors in the dimension beside us.
Right.
I think that was more of his concept versus like a disincarnate lost soul.
Right. And that's very likely. If in many ways that even though we can't prove it 100%, that could be what's going on. That very well could be what's going on, and they're responding to us. Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah. And the funny thing is do you know how many stories I've heard, like what your son has said, after people have investigated for, for a long period of time, they're just like, you know what? I think that we were thinking one thing, but we're thinking it's something more along the lines of what you're saying. A lot, and there's a lot of times when, I've done investigations on a place where nobody died, and there was just a very tragic event. There was one location that we did where a family always sees a gentleman running downstairs, and they smell smoke, and he's carrying a young child, over his shoulder and running out of the house. Come to find out, there was a fire. Two girls were trapped upstairs. He ran up, grabbed one of the girls, ran down, ran back up, grabbed the other girl, ran down. The house burned down. The house was rebuilt on the same foundation. They just, basically it's the same layout. And they're just seeing that tragic event happening over and over and over. There's no ghosts there. Nobody died there. And the funny thing is one of the investigators saw him running down the stairs and running out the door, and it just played, exactly to what the researcher came up with, and with all the documentations and all the stories that were told about that night, that because it happened in the middle of the night. I think it was like 2:00 in the morning or something like that. And they just we're just seeing what's happening in that particular space. It's just a psychic scar that's just part of that location now. Nobody died there.
Right. And I don't even think it has to be a tragic event. It just seems like heightened emotions in general, kind of lend itself to that. One of my favorite local stories, I was looking for a place to put my business one time, and this couple had refurbished an old sewing factory, and it is a huge facility and has like, a fitness center in it and just like all kinds of different spaces. And I was just kind of walking through admiring what they did to restore this building. And it was like during World War II, this factory was used to like sew like parachutes and uniforms. And so it was a big operation. And of course I had to ask, like, have you ever have anything strange happen in this building? And they told me stories about when they would be there, when they were, working on the space, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and they could hear the sounds of the sewing machines running, and they could hear the laughter of the women in the factory. And to me, that just gave me chills. I get chills thinking about to this day, to think that this was not a place of sadness. This was a place of, I'm sure a lot of the women that were there, even though it was a job to them, they probably felt like it served a higher purpose, for the war effort, and just, the amount of patriotism that fueled the United States in that moment. And to think that you could still hear them laughing. I just found
that's
that
amazing.
incredible. Yeah.
And that
whole stone tape theory, isn't that what they call that?
I was just going to say, there's a popular theory, the stone tape theory, and I've heard people liken it to a sense of time travel momentarily.
Yeah,
almost the fact that time doesn't exist, or it only our mind is creating the events in a certain order, or we're interpreting time in a certain way, and that we are literally just viewing something that already happened in our mind, or already happened in our dimension, but maybe in the universal grand scheme of things, it's happening concurrently, or at the same time we're existing.
Right. Yeah. You think about theaters too. How many old, flea pit theaters, historical theaters around the United States seem to be haunted with no real tragic history associated with them, and I think that is just it's the emotion of the crowd and the people that has just built something up in there, And then you also hear about places that wind up being like dead cells, like the energy over time seemed to have dissipated, and whatever kind of fueled the ghost lore that once, drew people in, as like, faded away for some reason. Yeah. Strange.
No, I mean, we were, oh my God, we were just talking about that. A friend of mine and I were talking about that. We're like, remember when that place used to just be crazy active? Now you walk in there, or you'll hear about people going in there and they don't catch anything. And we're like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I've seen that. I mean, we've experienced that to where at some point it was super active. Now there's nothing there. It just happens. Why?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Well, I guess if it's like a battery, maybe if there's nothing to recharge that battery over time, it just eventually drains, I don't know.
Yeah. It's just weird.
Yeah.
Things that we don't have answers for.
Right.
And that, I like to bring things full circle. I think Rob gets tired of me saying that, but even considering your documentary, that again, that's what I pulled away from this, is that we really, instead of settling for anything right now, we should be inspired to just keep asking questions. And that's what I liked about your perception about your 8-week experiment. 8 sessions, 8 weeks, is essentially you're saying, I've received this intelligent communication or this phenomena. I acknowledge it amongst everyone else in the ITC community. But my take on it is that we don't know what's going on. And my sessions were taking a different turn as the weeks went by. And there seemed to be, I don't want to use the word disgust, but some type of frustration surmounting between your communication that was leading you to believe, well, in the beginning, this started off fresh, but now it's taking a turn. Why is it taking a turn? I've been presenting the same questions week after week. I've had the same aura or energy or personality, approaching this with respect and kindness and compassion. And, the communication's turning on me. What happened?
Right.
What's going on? And that was so fascinating to me, because everyone's story, including mine or others, we're getting the same communication. And it's pretty plateaued in the sense that the mood doesn't really change so much. But I noticed the mood change in your sessions. I could feel the frustration watching it, every week go by, and I could hear the responses. You could hear the frustration in their responses. I mean, it was very clear. And I really made me think, going, what other questions should we be asking? Are we asking the right questions? And that's what your conclusion pointed to, is not just asking questions, but asking the right questions to further this.
Yeah. And I was really, I tried to be really careful and articulate when I crafted my sessions, because I didn't want anything that could be just settled with a yes or no. I really wanted, a response that would have to be fleshed out just a little bit more to, hold any type of weight. And, and I think, maybe it was because I just wouldn't derail from that pattern. And, maybe that's why the frustration, seemed to come through from the other side, because I really didn't have a lot of follow up with other things that they would ask me. I did a little bit in the bonus questions, but like the World War II or World War III stuff. I mean, that was crazy. But I didn't really have the opportunity to follow up from the previous week, because I wanted to stay on task with the same repetitive set of questions, mainly. So I found it pretty fascinating. And the amount of time, some of those, I couldn't really present the full sessions because there was a lot of dead space. And I would run through the set of questions 2 to 3 times per session. And sometimes I would just sit there for 2 minutes of silence, no radio bleed, nothing would come through at all. So it was a long process of, throughout those 8 weeks.
And that's what. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Rob.
No, go ahead, Josh. No, go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention, in terms of your production value, I loved how you edited the documentary. But I think what a lot of our audience already knows, and I might just be preaching to the choir, is that it's not that easy. If it seems like you're asking a question and immediately getting a response, and then you're editing it to the next question, getting a response, it doesn't always flow like that. It can. You can have amazing sessions where it's back and forth. But for the most part, it can be very tiring. You can wait minutes before you get a response. You can go a whole session and not get anything.
In response. Yeah, it's kind of against my personal ethics to if I ask a question to jump cut to what I perceive to be a response. I try never ever to do that. If I'm there's a big lull in time and I get something that comes through that might seem relevant to the situation or interesting, I'll put that in. But I try never to jump cut between the question and the response. But I might jump cut from, if I ask 3 questions and no responses, to that next question where I finally would get a response, because it's just a lot of, I mean, it's boring sometimes,
Right.
when nothing's coming through. And then when something comes through that's like shocking, it's like, wow, and those are the moments that you wait for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too is, like what we're all talking about, it's like not only asking the questions is important, but also listening. Listening can be just as important. Sometimes you're just sitting there and sometimes they want to come through, so you just listen, and then they might start asking you some things, and then you're like, wait a minute, and then you might ask a question, then you get a response. It's almost like sometimes they're waiting for you to listen to what they have to say, and not only with what you're not the only one that needs to ask questions, because they might want to ask you a question also.
Exactly. I mean, and that's really how you carry on a conversation. You
Yeah,
gotta
no,
have
exactly. It's not one side.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think we're all students in some way of Frank Sumption, the creator of the Ghost Box, who said, just listen. Just, this is so new to us. And we're just now getting the random voltage tune sweeping radios going. It's 20 years maybe that we've been sweeping them through random voltage. Just listen. Let's wait and see what they have to say. They may have tried to give you the ultimate clue to improve communication, and you were too busy blabbering about your deceased uncle and if he's still eating red licorice. There's times where we just need to listen. And your sessions, Rob, and your sessions, Matt, both in your documentary respectively and your live shows on Saturday, you ask the questions and then you listen. You're waiting for that response, and you don't keep talking over them.
So it's funny because here's like a perfect example. So it was weird, like during the Saturday session, it was late. I mean, it was almost 4:00 in the morning, or maybe it was 4:00 in the morning, because sometimes I used to do my sessions for 5 hours. But it was just one of those days. It was like, okay, let's do one last session and then we'll end it. So there was like, 12 people on, maybe, if that. And then we just said, if is anybody out there that wants to communicate, blah, blah, because it was just, usually I'll just have the audience ask questions. And I was like, okay, this is going to be the last session. So if anybody out there wants to communicate, we're here to listen. And then we heard somebody said murdered, and we're like, okay, how are you murdered? And it said shot. Where were you shot? Carolinas. Where in Carolinas? In a hotel. And we're like, so who shot you? And then they said the twins. And then they said two names. And then they said somebody else's name. And we're like, were those the people that killed you? Yes. And then he said, in room number, blah, blah, blah. He gave us a room number. And then we're like, okay, so what were they driving? A truck, a red truck. And he was just like going on and on and on. And it was mind blowing. And I was just like shocked. And I'm like, did anybody else hear what I was just hearing? What just happened here? Did he just tell us that he was murdered? And everybody else says, yeah. And then he said he was in room number such and such. Other people were saying, then he said these were the people that killed him, and they were twins, blah, blah. It was just like mind blowing with what we got.
That was early on in your Saturday shows, wasn't it, Rob?
And that was early on. Yeah, that was maybe.
I was listening to that at work. I remember that.
I think it was maybe a month in or something like that.
I do remember that. And that's when we were talking about the non-locale factor, on how basically this happened, 3,000 miles away. I'm just
right.
And we were receiving that communication very feverishly. I remember that coming through, and you were like, wait a minute, what is that? And then everyone kind of held their breath, like, what are we listening to?
And I was just so blown away. I said, you know what? I need to soak this in. We discussed it for a while. I think we stayed up for an hour just talking about it. We didn't do any more sessions. We were just like, and then I said, you know what? I need to go to bed now. I'm exhausted. I ended up looking up to see if there was any thing like that occurred, and there was in November or September, and it was unsolved. They were looking for the murder. There was a male who was shot in a hotel, and he said it was near an interstate. And this happened in South Carolina, and it was near an interstate, and there was a red truck involved. And we're like, is everything just matched up? And I talked to somebody that who's a psychic who does police work also. She said, you just got to let it go. She said, she said you would be held as a suspect because you have so much details and so many facts that if you would just come out and do even an anonymous tip, there's a chance that they might find you and you're going to be a suspect because you know too much.
It's a really good point.
Well, if it would have happened at that very moment when you were doing the ghost box session, you would have had a great alibi, though.
True.
Right.
Live on YouTube. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
True. Matt, you just saved Rob's butt there. That was great.
Yeah.
It's a great defense.
But we do have a link to. Do you want me to share this, Josh?
Matt, I have your copied link for the documentary that we're discussing, and I posted it to Rob in our private chat. I believe it's the right one. It's the one you sent me. To your YouTube channel that has the documentary, the Kicked Ash recap.
Yeah, Kicked Ash. Yep. My grandpa used to tell me that he was going to trade me in for a pile of brush, burn it, and kick the ashes. And so I've just always thought about kicking ash. Yeah.
Right. Oh no, that's a fitting tribute. I like it. I really.
Yeah, that is awesome.
And that's one thing to Rob's point, we were talking about as far as like listening and so forth, and maybe we're missing so much because, it's hard to hear. And if we're not, really focused and tuned in, and even when we are, we still miss so much and we hear so much more upon review. And that's why I try to point out in my wrap up, it's like, I think ghost boxes are fine. I think people are broken. Ghost boxes work, but people are broken because, we seem to be the flaw in all this potentially. So as far as like trying to make sense of the phenomena.
And that's interesting. And I don't know if this ties in, but I'm kind of speaking along to your point. There are times when, even if it's a weekend and I put my sons to bed and I'm really tired from work, or I get home at an unusual hour and I'm like, you know what, let me do a ghost box session, but I'm tired and I'm low on energy. Mm-hmm. I will literally connect and they'll say, call back. And sometimes they say because they're busy, or a lot of the times I look back retrospectively and go, you know what, it's probably because I was tired and didn't have energy. And I was the one that was broken, not the radio, not them, but I wasn't ready to receive the message. Maybe I wasn't alert enough, aware enough. I didn't have the energy, but I'm pretty sure there are times when they've said, call back, we're busy. And I believe there's times when they've insinuated call back, and I've heard them say sleep or get sleep. And they're basically just like, we're done with you right now. Just come back another time.
And the other potential is you didn't have enough energy to facilitate what they needed to read you.
Exactly. And I don't know how it works, but that's what it kind of felt like they were insinuating. And you actually said it perfectly, that I just simply didn't have the energy that they could read me. Exactly.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah. I don't know, again, what's going on, but definitely the communication going back and forth, especially, and I want people you have the link posted, Rob? Yeah. Check out.
Yes, I posted it.
Please check out the documentary. It's fascinating. And I love the way that you produced it. And it's all compacted in 1 hour. I mean, it's just an excellent viewing experience.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot more responses that were in the shorter clips, the week by week. I just kind of went through and grabbed the stuff that seemed most significant, or the pieces that kind of built upon itself or kind of repeated itself, like the praying kept coming up, and multiple times throughout the video. And then it kept delving into the biblical stuff, which I just found fascinating as well. It's like, what is going on? And then the number 7. And so I was really looking for any type of pattern or anything that I could really pull from it that, left me with something substantial that I could kind of talk about and consider, besides just random stuff.
Right. There was someone in our chat a little while ago, and I'm trying to find the message of the person. I believe they were labeled as parasense. I'm not sure what their name was. I'm having trouble remembering, but they mentioned, or they confirmed, they also received communication from a spirit or entity calling themselves Seven. So they were communicating to us when we were talking about that. So it appears that other people have recorded that as well.
Yeah, Steve Holte, when I posted a couple of my videos before the wrap up was done, he even reached out to me one time. He's like, what is up with all these people hearing from Seven? And he brought up like a couple other people that he'd heard from recently that were getting that name. So
I have not come across
pretty
that
weird. Yeah.
At all. And also, can I ask you a question? This is kind of somewhat related to the entities or the names that we're getting in it, such as Seven. I've been hearing on a shortwave band through the mini Inkbox or any shortwave scannable radios. A friend of ours, Austin Maynard, has reported that people around the country are picking up a preacher that appears to be not in this dimension, but is crossed over. And he's preaching to everyone who's tuning in on this shortwave radio. He knows exactly everything about your life, your quote unquote, as he would call them, sins, and things like this. And people are now reporting this preacher is coming through more actively and reaching out beyond the shortwave band and now being picked up in the medium wave band of AM. And so I didn't know if either of you have heard of this, but apparently, I'll just say it like this: an entity or a spirit, whatever it is getting more strength and is able to reach now beyond shortwave and is now communicating on medium wave. And people are documenting this entity growing in power. Again, I don't know what words to use here, but he's now being found or scanned on multiple wavelengths. I don't know if you guys have heard anything like that.
I'm going to have to break out my radio and just leave it on and see, tune it into shortwave and see if I can pick anything up.
It's becoming a thing. I mean, I heard about it once in passing, and now other people are bringing it to my attention, and I haven't heard it at all.
Does this preacher, does he identify himself as, does he give a name?
I believe there is a name. Probably my listening comprehension, I don't remember what Austin had told me, but it's becoming a thing in the sense that a few people heard it, now more people, and now they're finding him not only on shortwave scanning, but medium wave scanning. And they're finding him at all sweep speeds in all areas, and it's being documented. And so just keep your ears out. If you guys hear anything like this, or if anyone else is picking up on this, is that this entity, for lack of better words, is gaining or widening its reach, if you will. I don't know.
Yeah, I know there have been, like, in the past, at least, I've heard of like radio stations that broadcast like 24/7 and they just play the same song. I think there's like one famous channel that played like Pete the Magic Dragon, like, 24/7 for over, like, 30 some years, constantly. I not to say that this would explain that phenomena, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was stations out there like that would broadcast. But if this thing is given like specific details and information to the receiver of the messages, that's pretty amazing.
In fact, one example that was given to me was, and I wasn't given the name, but that a particular woman was sinned because she had an abortion, and it was very personal information. And he said, something's going to happen to you because of this. And that was very personal to how basically she confessed no one would have known this. It's impossible.
Wow.
But apparently she had spread this information because it was so scary to her and so unbelievable. And she wasn't aware of something like this. And so that's how it's starting, because the information is becoming very personal, and threats are being made. As we've all heard this type of information from this communication, we get called names, there's cussing and things like that. But this got serious, and so it's I don't know. I haven't experienced it. I've been scanning shortwave, medium wave, long wave, and I haven't heard from this quote unquote preacher.
Interesting.
Yeah, just thought I'd bring it up. I didn't know if anyone.
I hope he sounds like Johnny Cash. That would be awesome.
That would fit the bill, right? In terms of
that's what I'm envisioning. Yeah.
Right.
The man in black. Wow. I'm gonna have to look into that. I'll have to
Yeah,
contact Austin and ask him.
please, because he put me on alert. He was on our show, Rob. If you remember, he brought it up.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing it from other people that are like 2 or 3 degrees removed from Austin, who happens to know everyone in the community. And now what I'm hearing back is, oh my gosh, this information is very personal, and it's not friendly communication.
It's almost like you hear about the Zozo phenomena with like Ouija boards, something similar, but in the ghost box realm, which makes you wonder. It's like if Rob and I were in the same room and we both had 2 ghost boxes going and we were able to tune this guy in, could he talk to us individually simultaneously?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Crazy.
Yeah. Well, sorry to ramble about that. I had to find
No,
out
it's interesting.
It seems like it's gaining traction, whether I don't know if it's exaggerated. Again, I just don't know, but it's becoming more of a topic now these days.
And I thought it was set at a set frequency too.
Well, that's how it started, but now apparently people are scanning, the entire shortwave and now medium wave, and now they're picking up his information or his voice or communication on medium wave. By people who seem to be credible, who've been doing this for a period of time. So people are going, what's going on here? Why is this like you have Ed, Rob, he's always in your communication, no matter where you go, what you do.
Right.
Matt, you have 7. Apparently these people have this preacher that just won't go away.
Wow.
I don't know.
Scary. Yeah. I was with a group of investigators one time, and we were in an old poor farm here in Indiana. And at one point I was in Salem, Massachusetts, and I bought this pendulum board called the Mystic Eye. And you would hold a pendulum above the board and it would move. And the gimmick behind it was there was a reverse polarized magnet underneath the board. And so the pendulum was made of a metal that would resist and point away from the center of the board. So it looks really creepy on film because this thing constantly kind of wants to, be out and moving around. But you would hold it still and you would ask questions, and this thing would point and spell out just like, like a Ouija board or something like that. And we were with, this group of investigators. My buddy Gene Caswell was operating it. And this thing started to spell out Zozo. And of course, my buddy Gene just freaked out, and he's like, no way. And all of a sudden, the pendulum pointed straight down, which was like physically impossible because of the magnet underneath it. And it just like it stopped and dropped dead. And then he threw that thing down so fast. And that was pretty much the end of the night. But the weirdest synchronicity about this that I will never forget is we got in our vehicles to make the 2-hour drive home. And I'm driving my vehicle and someone else is in another, and they have access to the Paraholics Facebook page. And they called me from the other car and they're like, you're not going to believe this, but you need to look right now at the Paraholics messages. And so I had someone pull up my phone. We pull up this message. At that same moment, that hour that we had been there and leaving the poor farm, someone had sent me a message, a random person needing help because they were playing with a Ouija board and had been getting the name Zozo coming across. It could have been the wildest coincidence ever, but it was pretty mind-blowing.
What's the probability of that happening?
Exactly. Wow. And yeah, so weird how stuff like that manifests, definitely will get your attention when it wants to.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, the probability of that happening exactly at the same time.
Unreal.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. So the Holtes are saying that you like goats.
Goats? Me?
Yeah. They're saying Matt likes goats. I don't know. They said whether they're in trees or not in trees, Matt just loves goats.
Random humor is the best. But they don't have to be in trees.
Yeah,
Okay.
when I'm not ghost hunting, I'm goat hunting. It's just a little side hobby of mine. Everybody has a side hustle, I'm a
Right.
goat hunter.
A goat. Right. Want to see some church
And
giggles.
Katie wants to see some church giggles.
What do you want from us?
What?
And just
Aren't the Halties supposed to be in bed? What time is it?
It's past their bedtime. That's all I know.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
it is. And thank you to our audience for staying up. I know for many of you it's super late. Thank you for joining us. I'm still the holdup, so I'll bear the burden of that. So sorry, guys.
I think that they're
Funny.
delusional because they're past their bedtime.
Yeah, of
Mhm.
course. Kanga Blue mentioned that we were talking about shortwave, medium wave, long wave, scanning the EM spectrum, microwaves, the whole thing. It's Kanga says too much strength to transition different levels, wavelengths. And I think what you're asking, Kanga, is do certain spirits seem to operate or communicate at specific frequencies? One thing I've noticed, and again, I can't prove anything, but the communication coming in is they will tell me in terms of sweep speed where to stop. Certain spirits or entities like to communicate at different speeds. And I have found that certain intelligent communication coming in does prefer particular frequencies. And I do get certain communication on FM than I do on AM. I have noted that it's not, I hear from different, I guess, again, call them entities at different frequencies. And that's been documented over time through statistical modeling. But I don't know exactly what the barrier to entry or what the overall barrier is if certain communication coming from a specified entity is only received on a certain frequency. It appears like they could use multiple frequencies, but I have noticed that certain voices will come through at certain frequencies. I don't know if that's what you're asking. I don't know if that was a fragmented sentence. I'm just trying to address that the best I can.
No, that's all right. So Steve said that him and Katie took a nap and were snuggling for a while. So that's why they're up aggravating us or agitating us, I should say.
Katie says Matthew has superb manscaping skills.
That's the thing I love about the ITC community. There are no secrets.
Well, yeah, I know. My personal life was discussed on the second podcast we ever had, Rob. It just was laid out on the line by a psychic. I was like, okay, I guess this is what's going to happen. So, it is what it is.
I own a hair salon / barbershop.
Oh, that's okay.
So yeah, that's what I do for a living. And some of the craziest paranormal experiences that I actually had happened in a hair salon that I used to work in that was haunted. And ironically, that space is below where I years later acquired the skeleton from. It was all in the same building.
Ooh.
So
wow.
there was like one city block in Columbus, Indiana, where my business is, that just had this weird, history all tied into one place. I mean, not only did the building have, all these temples and skeletons and rituals that were performed there, but there was also a furniture store there, and historically cabinet makers used to make coffins and also embalm people. All that stuff happened in the same building where the salon now exists. But prior to that, it was the first Catholic church and burial ground, and it was the only Catholic burial ground for a period of time in between Louisville and Indianapolis. And
Wow.
so when the buildings came in, they supposedly moved all the graves of the old Catholic cemetery, but there are records in the 1980s of them still finding grave remains on that city block. So it was like the perfect storm of all this strange history, in this one area. And, here I am, I'm cutting hair in this space. And one time I got to see a hand mirror get thrown across the cutting room floor. It was tossed like a Frisbee, which was just crazy. There was no one in the back of the space. And I was up front with the owner and two customers, and this mirror just shoots level flat off of the station and just gets tossed, and the glass shatters. And I also saw a full-on apparition in there one morning that it was like this. It was early in the morning. I turn everything on and I look across the cutting floor, and there's this it was about the size of a person standing there, but it was like a smoky, like a heavy smoke, like a cigar type smoke, like in the middle of the room. And,
Mm.
rationally, I thought somebody left on a hot tool, or something short circuited when I flipped on the lights and caused smoke. I didn't think anything strange until I took one step towards it, and it started to shift. And as it shifted, it got thinner and thinner and thinner, and then went right through the wall. And as it was moving, I started moving towards it quicker. And when I got to the spot where it was, I could smell nothing. There was nothing there. And I investigated. I turned every cabinet, every workstation upside down, trying to find any rational explanation for what I just saw. But yeah, mind blown. And so that was kind of the precursor to me really getting in and starting to dig deeper into the subject. And then when I found out the history of the space, my God, we're on top of an old cemetery and there's skeletons upstairs, and
Right.
it was really crazy. It was a really fun time though, to experience
Wow.
all that, and moments of discovery.
And to think about that mirror being shot across the room at the speed it was, I mean, what, 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour? I mean,
Oh, it was more like a gentle toss, but
okay.
it probably went like, I would say 7, 8 feet out into the middle of the room.
Okay. That's
So
still a
that much
lot.
force.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking
still a
I'm
lot.
thinking a fastball, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot of force for something that,
And it wasn't a mirror that was hanging. I mean, it was laying flat on a
yeah.
surface, and it
Wow.
was just like something knocked it off.
Wow.
Yeah.
You
Fun
know,
stuff.
and I know that Rob's experienced that on his investigations. I would
Yeah.
say probably I can't even count how many stories you've told me with things
There's
like
so
that.
many stories. There's
Right.
too many stories.
I've only experienced that happen once to me, but you guys have had it happen obviously several times. And
Yeah.
I have no explanation for that. And people, I guess that's what's called poltergeist activity. Is that
Yes.
okay? I'm not exactly an investigator, so I don't know those terms per se. But Rob, I think you've defined that as poltergeist activity.
Yeah.
Rob
But
doesn't
I
want to
mean,
talk
people
about
would be surprised on what poltergeist activity is caused by. But it's pretty interesting. That's another topic for
it.
another
Right.
day.
That's why I was walking a thin line, bringing it up because I didn't know if we wanted to go down that path. But
Yeah.
definitely interesting. And then you brought that skeleton home that was above you, and that's
Yeah. Years later, I probably discovered that skeleton was up there because, once I found out the history of the space I was in, the business next door was essentially from the curbside in the same building. Had been divided in time. And I was talking to the owner of that business, and I was like, "Hey, we have all kinds of weird stuff that happened over in Suite A. What's happening over in Suite B?" And he's like, "Well, if you saw what was upstairs, it's no wonder weird stuff happens in this building." And he's the one that clued me into the abandoned temple that was upstairs above his space. And he's the one that first led me up there. And I had a few opportunities to investigate that space. And then there's this, a whole temple area set up with like, the throne room and swords and robes. And my God, there is a human skeleton in a coffin. And I mean, yeah, just insane. It's like I cannot believe adults act like this.
right. Well said.
Yeah, and it was mind blowing. It's like this cannot be real. And so years later, that guy that owned the business that was next door actually bought the building. And I'm good friends with his brother, and his brother reached out to me, and he's like, "Yo, man, my brother just bought the building. He does not know what to do with the skeleton." And I'm like, "I have a solution."
Yeah, I'm gonna put it where my son sleeps in the house.
Yes, yeah, and I do want. I think the interesting thing about it, I mean, those old, secret societies. Of course, they had their strange rituals, but the creepiest part of it for me personally is how they acquired the skeletons. I mean, there were companies that provided these skeletonized specimens for these groups, and to me, that's where the real creepy stuff lies. And so I've delved in a little bit and been doing some research into that. But ultimately, I would like to have studies done on the skeleton, and I would love to find a museum that would want to talk about the history of the groups and the skeletons. And it's kind of a weird, dark little slice of American history that not too many people are probably aware of.
Yeah, and I think that would be, I mean, absolutely, to have that examined more closely,
Mm-hmm.
especially because I mean, it's just weird how you found it. I don't know that. Usually, I would expect you to say you found the skeleton at another location, but the way you found it, like you said, humans can be so weird. Adults were acting like this, and so to have that examined, especially like you said, there's secret societies, there's rituals. We don't know what the story behind the bag of bones really is.
Yeah.
And to have that examined, I mean, that would be fascinating. I'd love to find out, even following along with your documentary and your research, what becomes of that.
I think a lot of those groups really wanted to portray to their members and to new recruits, trying to get their money, really wanted to portray to them that they had deep secret arcane knowledge. And so the more crazy and mystical they could portray and perform in their ceremonies and rituals, I think the more duped and mesmerized that a lot of the new members were. So a lot of it had to be, it was like being blindfolded and touching this human skeleton and basically promising to take the group secrets to your grave and, just all kinds of stuff like that. But it's really the grave robbing and the poaching of poor people that would pass away and the homeless people and the companies that actually did that. That's the real horrific, piece of it to me. I mean, boys will be boys, as cliche as that sounds, and men come up with odd things. But the companies that I actually have copies of some of these old catalogs, and they called the skeletons scenes. And you could order a deodorized scene for $45 back in 1898. It's so crazy to me.
So if there's deodorized, then there's undeodorized for a slightly cheaper price.
$35.
Right. Okay. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, just strange stuff.
Well, in terms of your research, and I'm fascinated by the documentary release, and I know there's longer segments, and you summarized your 8 weeks, your 8 sessions in the most recent documentary. Rob and I have been talking about this, and I've been really wanting to ask you about this. We're going to all continue our research on the radio, to the best of our knowledge, to the best of our ability, but where do we go from here? Obviously, we're asking better questions, and we all agree that's what we need to do. But essentially, I know Rob is working with more of a direct radio voice or a direct contact through frequency, a set frequency or overlapping frequencies. Do you see, in terms of technology, any way we can improve this? I mean, I had some ideas, but I don't know. I just, Rob and I have been talking about that a lot lately, and it's been a topic of conversation is Rob's, are you done building radios? Are you done with the radio? Rob, I don't want to speak for you, but I believe you kind of said, yes, I am. I'm on to other things. I'm on to other research. I don't want.
So
speak
I mean,
for yourself. I don't want to.
No. Just answering that question. I mean, for right now, I built my last 3 boxes, and they all two went to the UK and one went to Australia. So yeah, about 85% of my boxes are in the UK. I think I can actually name everybody that in the US that has my boxes, but the people in the UK, I've lost count on how many of my boxes went to the UK. I mean, I would say 150, 180, somewhere around there.
I didn't know you made
went
that
to
many.
the UK.
Wow.
Yeah, I built maybe a couple of hundred. Yeah, and only, like I said, maybe 20, maybe 25 have shipped to the US and the rest to the UK.
Wow. Yeah, Steve and Katie got you on lockdown here in the United States.
I I don't think the potential of radio experiments is done. I still think it's still in its infancy.
Right.
I think as far as like how we conduct the sessions, I almost think that in order to test things out, we need to probably find ways of almost removing ourselves from the equation as much as possible, just to see what we can do to take our minds, our accessibility, I guess I should say, the accessibility of our thoughts as far removed from the session as possible. And how that could be facilitated, I really, really don't know. But I'm definitely excited at some of the guys being driven to push the direct radio voice thing. I think
Right.
that's something that hasn't been, at least in the United States, tapped into a whole lot. And I would love to see the potential of what that could lead to, or maybe a possibility of marrying all those concepts together. I mean, I think we're just on the cusp of the beginning of all this. I think we're on the first wave, honestly.
Right.
So I don't think the radio's done. I just think that we're learning as we go, and we're going to improve on our end, and hopefully that's going to have some revelations for everyone. But
Right.
I think just repeating the same thing over and over and over. I mean, I don't think that you're going to get, you're not going to get very far doing that,
Right.
or any further, I should say.
And that's what I wanted to find out, because you two have been doing this. You've been producing so many results for so long. And Rob, you've been an investigator for as long as I can remember. And Matthew, I've been watching your videos for I don't even know how long. Has it been over a decade now? I mean, I believe it was prior to you even doing anything on YouTube. I believe I was seeing your pictures of the boxes you were getting on Facebook. I mean, you've owned almost everything that anyone has ever created. And so
except for Rob's, I need a Rob box.
Yeah, Rob, you're not done building. You've got a few.
You got one more.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to get your take on this, because after seeing your documentary and hearing your perception, your theories, which I'm finding fascinating and I'm really grasping onto, and I like the fact that you're teaching everyone and reminding everyone to ask better questions. I really wanted to get your perception about where we're headed with this. And, I talked to Rob about this too, because you're both very influential in the community. And so I think it's important to find out where everyone's going, what we're doing.
I think the I can't talk right now. I'm getting tired.
Thank you for being
the
with
discussion, the discussions that we're having now, and the community reaching out with Rob and you, and the other night, like a meeting like Rob, the other Rob, and Steve and Bruce, and the concept of the think tanks, and all of us kind of getting together and just sharing ideas, and doing like I think a rundown of what worked and what hasn't worked, and what could we do better, and I think it's just going to be all of us kind of coming together and sharing, I think, is what's really going to push things forward, because I don't think any of us at this point, whether you're a builder or you're an experimenter or you do both, I don't think there's any question amongst that community. I mean, maybe you started off wanting to just prove it was real to yourself, but I think most of us are well beyond that. And it's like, okay, so what can we do to make this more solid and get better exchanges, and where's it leading us to? I think there's got to be some guideposts, some common goal that we all are striving towards. So.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like right now, I'm still trying to decide what I'm going to do. Well, so I'm going to build another box for myself.
Ooh,
it's a
look
black
at that.
one.
Very nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, it came out really nice.
It did.
So, that's one of the last cases I had. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I might start up doing a different type of build. I'm still just not sure. But I mean, I just ordered some pro equipment so I can start playing with different audio frequencies. Because I'm big on low or high frequency audio, playing like in the 900 hertz range, actually 962 hertz range. So gotten some great results doing that, playing around with that. So that's something that I wanted to dive a little bit deeper in. And there's some other frequency levels on which Bruce was talking about. And I kind of wanted to play around with some of those frequencies also to see if we can pick up some, I guess, more like disembodied voices coming through. Speaking of which, so this morning, this is actually my office also. So I work, at the same desk during the day. So this morning I came in, I don't know what time was that, Josh, about 8 something when you messaged me.
You texted me during my morning coffee, so yes, it was
okay.
About 8
so yeah, I had a Zoom meeting at 7:00 my time, 10:00 Eastern. And I'm sitting here, and all of a sudden I hear a woman's voice come literally from over my shoulder, which came from literally right. So on my table, I have like a little altar that I have my ghost boxes on, just things that I use for the Saturday show. Which sounded like EVP of a woman, and she was screaming. She was screaming for help. And it sounded exactly like it would come from a recorder, an EVP through a recorder. It sounded like she was coming from from inside of a well, but it sounded like it was coming from like I said, like a recorder, but it was loud enough for me to hear it, and it startled me. I was like, what the hell is that? But it was nobody from outside. It was literally from right here. But yeah, it just startled me. So, those are the types of experiences I have in here quite often. So that's why I wanted to try to play around with different frequencies to see if I could pick something else up. Not only, using the ghost box, but trying to use, other type of audio sources.
Excellent. Yeah. And I hope you keep building, Rob. I feel like, well, it's your decision, but I still feel like there's a lot left on the table with your boxes, and a lot of people still might want them, but that I totally understand. I understand how you want to pursue set frequencies or overlaid frequencies or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much more to tap into, and just building boxes. I mean, it's so time consuming that I think I just kind of got burnt out. That's part of it.
I think we lost Matt.
Anyway,
is Matt gone?
Yeah, I think we lost him for a second.
Okay.
Here he is. He's back.
Okay. Matt, thank you for staying on so late with us. I appreciate it. If you have to go at any time, we totally understand. We're West Coast time.
I have no idea what happened. I just totally got kicked off.
Yeah. Wow. They didn't like us talking about future experiments.
Yeah, they didn't.
I mean, that's par for the course.
Yeah.
But
again, we don't want to. I was going to say, between the skeleton and my internet interruptions at the beginning of the show, something's going on.
Yeah, my phone didn't die. I mean, it's totally charged. It just shut down.
It is.
Yeah, weird. Yeah. This has been a lot of fun, guys. I really appreciate you having me on. This has been great.
And we would like you to come back. And again, your research and your theories are fascinating. You do in-depth, thorough research. So I encourage everyone, we have the link in the chat. Please check out this documentary, The Kicked Ash Recap. And you can get an idea of what Matthew's working on, and then go back and watch each individual session, and you'll hear the responses. They're clear. They're coming out of it's a 6604 radio by Holte Paranormal, and they're clear, and you can hear them, and you can hear the frustration build over time and how the communication changes. And it's a really fascinating testament to your experience with this in this documentary. But please check it out, everyone.
And if they would like to know more about just some of my work in general, if they would go to www.paraholics.com, my blog, there's links on there and more information about the background to some of the videos I've made and the sessions. Lots of information on there about my skeleton and the ITC sessions I did in the temple before I removed the skeleton using my reverse speech box. There's a lot of really fun things for people if they want to go check that all out. So please do so and drop me a line if anyone has any questions or ideas or observations of maybe something that they've seen from my work, or anything they would like to add. I'm always open, because I am not an expert. I'm an open book to this stuff. So,
well, you have to be the expert, because I learned a lot from you. So I look up to you. So you've got to be an expert of some kind, right?
Oh, well, I just try hard.
Well, your trying hard is really proved itself well, because again, your research and your responses, or the communication that you are capturing in this documentary, and all of your work is clear and concise, and you can hear it, and it's just fascinating. I've enjoyed watching your material a lot.
Well, and I've learned a lot from you guys too, and I really enjoyed, especially the exchange that we had, I think, on YouTube, just in the messages when we were talking about radios with reverb, and we were talking about
reverb.
You tell me about the dry and the wet responses, because I listened to you guys, and there are definitely some downsides to using many effects with ghost boxes. I know, I've owned them all, and I've ran them all through. But when I was using boxes that were heavily, like with a lot of reverb, the responses that I would hear that really stood out are the ones that didn't seem to have a lot of reverb to them, and it seemed to be almost disconnected from all that. And so when I reached out to you, I was so glad to hear like your response, like, yeah, there are different things that you can hear, that are more anomalous even through those effects. Right. And so I've enjoyed the material you guys are putting out, and the discussions, and the guests you've had on, even Steve Holte. But
even Steve, right?
Even Steve, yeah. But no, I mean, you guys are doing a great thing. So I definitely, I'm supportive of what you're doing. You guys are having great conversations and putting out some good information, good food for thought. So it's been inspiring. It's been inspiring to me. So I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
I mean, that's why we started this show. We're trying to, get the word out and try to kind of educate people on what, because I mean, it's coming from somebody that's an experienced audio engineer, an ITC researcher, and now, I've been building boxes, things like that. I mean, and I've always told people, be careful, and then we had that discussion on reverb. So reverb is there because I only put it in my boxes because that's what people wanted. But, and I said, you have to be very careful. Just add just a little sprinkle of reverb if that's what you want, just so it's not going to change the communication outcome.
Yeah, I agree.
Just a little,
just a little bit, just a skosh, a smidgen.
Yeah. Just a smidgen.
Unless you truly want to hear a dry response come through a heavily reverberated audio signal flow, then that's obviously, I see the purpose and intent in that. But if you're just doing general review and general work with reverb,
I agree. So it depends on, I think, the purpose of the experiment. If you're doing an ITC experiment versus a ghost box session, because I think those two things can be different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's a very good point.
Well, guys, believe it or not,
all right.
it takes a lot of work for me to manscape. I just asked the Holtes.
Thank you so much for staying up with us. Rob and I are going to go, I think, a few more minutes, but
awesome, man.
We'll let you go, and please come back anytime.
Hey, man, anytime. Great. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You have a home here with us, so
yes,
feel free to reach out.
I will. Thank you. All right. I'll be in touch.
Have a good night.
Bye. You too.
Bye.
Well, that was a treat, and I really hope everyone can take the time to watch the documentary. And again, that's just the tip of the iceberg with Matthew's work. He has so many videos, and he has videos of almost every box ever created. I mean, he has so much information.
I know for a while there, I mean, he had a lot of geo boxes in the beginning for a while. And then he ventured out to getting other boxes too. So,
well, and it's interesting because he does show these boxes objectively and how they work out in the field. Everything from, everything we love from Steve and Katie all the way to the Geo box, and objectively what is going on with these boxes and what do the responses sound like coming in. And Matthew's always been a wide range of knowledge, or an encyclopedia for the sounds of ghost boxes. And his research, I mean, that's just talking about his equipment. His research is thorough, and he provides examples and just plenty of clips that I truly are a testament to the last decade of ITC research, especially with the ghost box and radio based ITC. So definitely, if you want to talk to someone who knows what's going on and knows how to use the equipment, knows how to conduct a session, reach out to Matthew, the Paraholics, and he'll definitely help you out.
Exactly.
So, Rob, when I was cut off at the beginning of the show, I believe I heard you were talking about you were not building anymore. Is that correct? We've talked about
I mean,
the show.
Dude, I mean, right now, I don't know.
I'm gonna pinpoint you right here.
I don't know what I'm gonna do. I mean, right now, dude, look, I went from different boards, I can't even show it off. Anyway, I went from different mixers, different things like that. From consumer grade. Now I'm going, it's all your fault, man. I don't care what you say. It's all your fault. I'm going freaking pro audio. I'm freaking building a rack. Let's just put it that way.
Yes. That means we're going to have more ghost boxes streaming. We're going to have more capabilities. We can do the experiments we were talking about. Yes, you're building a rack. I love it. Do people, okay, so the rack, you guys, Rob is building a rack. I'm spending his money for him. And he's going to have everything set up so we can run all the experiments we dreamed about. Multiple ghost boxes streaming. Hopefully I can stream something from where I'm at through his system. We can do the video feedback loop method, Klaus Schreiber. We can do that live video ITC experimentation. This is really going to open up what we can do and provide you streaming across the world. So this is a really big deal. And you have me to thank because I'm spending Rob's money. So everyone clap for me. I'm spending your boy's money.
Oh, dude, it's.
I'm really happy for you, man. No, it's going to open up a whole new world of possibilities for you. You're streaming multiple shows now. You're doing a lot for live paranormal. I think you have to go this route. I really do.
But, dude, and right now, you know what I'm using as my interface? I just picked one up just so I can actually do the show tonight because I had to take back my other mixer.
Right.
I'm just using a freaking Zoom P4.
Okay.
But that's just to drive my stupid SB7. I mean my SM7B. Right, I see I have ghost boxes in my head. That's to drive my stupid SM7B. And then even I still had to use my cloud lifter, and on my side it sounds like crap. I don't know what I sound like on, going out.
Sounds good.
But on my side, and then me trying to drive these freaking 250 ohm headset using this, I'm like cranked all the way up and I can barely hear it. Right. So I'm struggling.
You need a headphone amp, probably. I'd recommend a headphone amp.
But one of my mixers is coming in tomorrow. So then the other one on Friday. So so I'm just struggling to get through this show today.
Oh, well, okay. I'm glad our audience got to hear that. I'm teasing you because I know how much you've been through, and I know how many shows you've been streaming lately. I mean, you've been online almost every day, streaming shows or testing equipment. So I want our audience to know how much you love them and care about them, how tirelessly you're working to get our dream set up to do live ITC streaming, whether it's audio, video, a combination of the two. I'm even wanting to hook up some type of holography type experiment in right there where you're sitting. And it'll surround you so you can't move and you're trapped by these lasers. And we'll see if we get communication in high frequency through the lasers around you sitting there. So.
Dude, I mean, it's going to be awesome because you know what's funny is I was just thinking of this just with all the possibilities, and now with me being able to run a DAW live,
right,
and then have it feed back out. It's going to be freaking just it's just crazy. Just thinking about it. It's just going to be crazy.
Well, and I think it's one thing I wanted to bring up. We were talking with, did I interrupt you? I apologize.
No.
There was latency there for a second. I was just going to say, one of the things that we were all talking about where do we go from here, is conducting more of these live streaming experiments, because a lot of people who are just getting into this either don't have the equipment, maybe be low on funds at the moment, don't know how to get started. And your studio is literally providing people around the world tuning in an opportunity. As long as they can access the internet, they can hear a live ghost box, they can see live video feedback looping, they can get this information. So I think that is where we go next, is include more people, get more people involved the right way, through the right information, the right technology, things like that.
Yeah, and I mean, if anybody wants to do a live ghost box stream over the internet, I can tell them the best solutions to do it.
Right.
Just because I've dealt with every single piece of freaking hardware out there as far as mixers, as far as, budget mixers to high-end mixers. Right. I can tell you what works the best. I could give you the best setup. There's certain mixers you want to stay away from because the latency is so bad. It might work for about literally a minute before it starts breaking up and gives you a lot of feedback, and then, or crackling, just because the DAC doesn't work properly during the conversion.
Yeah.
There's just, and then trying to do things with virtual cables, what works and what won't work. Virtual cables, yeah, they're great for some things, but trying to use them for a live stream, not so much.
Right. It's still the old theory where you're better to be hardwired or hard connected still at this point. Anything virtual or Wi-Fi still, it suffers from more latency. So it's,
yeah. So there's just a lot. So that's basically why right now, I'm more focused on that than, and I'm sorry I'm rambling, but I'm telling you where my mind is right now, opposed to box building. Right now, I got, I only have basically a couple of cases left. But like I said, I'm building this black one for myself. It was just something that I wanted to do. So I'm going to do that. And then I promise somebody else about a box. I got to look for a case for that. And then, but those are the only 2 boxes that I have planned to build for a while. I don't know if will be a year from now. I don't know. I don't know. I just have so much on my plate that I got to get done. So, and my audio rack is going to take precedence over anything right now.
Well, you're driving the bus of live paranormal. I mean, am I saying that?
Yeah, no, that's
you're essentially driving correct. And so you have a lot of responsibility to help all those shows thrive. So that's actually really important too, is you're helping the whole platform get information out there. And I have to say, Rob, of all the years I've been researching EVP and radio-based ITC, anything with audio and ITC, I am really fascinated with what you've come up with, or what you're progressing with in terms of frequencies and blending certain frequencies together as solid tones and getting full communication through those frequencies. And I don't think our audience knows just how much you've experimented with that and how much really solid evidence you have with that. And I'm not asking you to present that. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I really feel like you're heading in a fantastic direction, and it could lend itself to even more communication and more audible, intelligible communication.
Well, I just put out a video on reverse speech. If anybody hasn't seen it yet, here I could share it really quick. I did a video on reverse speech on the different sweep speeds on reverse speech. So I took all of the top speeds. I went from 300 millisecond, 250 millisecond, 200 millisecond, and 150.
Right.
So I took all of those different frequency or different sweep speeds and kind of did a comparison on here's what audio sounds like in reverse at 300 milliseconds, then 250, I went down the line. So with that being said, it's like everything that you do in forward speech, it's total opposite with reverse speech. all the theories that you would think of using for forward speech, you throw them out because reverse speech is a whole new ballgame.
Yeah.
The difference between 150 and 200, it's people can argue. I mean, you can say, well, I kind of like this a little bit. I like it a little slower, but in theory, I mean, just experimenting with it and me being able to do it for hours on it. I don't know how many hours experience I have using reverse speech now. I've even lost count. I mean, I'm probably at over 200 hours, maybe.
Wow.
At least.
Well, your audience is your Saturday audience has quite a bit of experience in reverse speech now as
Right.
well.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, so for me to have that much, in reverse speech, I mean, it's, that much time experimenting with it. It's just crazy.
Right.
But anyway, if you want to watch that video, feel free to, I'll throw it up there.
Sure. Yeah. Put the link up. Katie says Steve Holte was the original loudmouth in regards to reverse speech and ITC. And in fact, Katie, I remember listening to those streams years ago on your live Ghostbox stream. I believe it was one of the decks that maybe Rich Georgina was popular for converting into a Ghostbox. They were like the Marantz or the high-end shelf units, if you will, like the home hi-fi units. And you guys had a reverse function on that. And I used to listen to that at work. I was really upset when that wasn't in the App Store anymore, or for whatever reason, the service stopped. I really enjoyed that. But I know that you and Steve have many hours logged in with reverse speech. Dawn says this past Saturday was very active on the Ghost Box and so very clear.
And you know what's funny is Saturday's session was like the shortest show I've ever done. It was only an hour and an hour and a half, maybe.
That's all you gave the audience, Rob?
Dude, I was exhausted.
Oh, yeah, but
I did 2 other shows that day.
Yeah, but come on, a little more Red Bull. Come on, a little extra cup of coffee.
And then plus, I just got over being sick.
I know you had a tough week. I remember that. It was, and you had, of all the weeks for you to come down with a bug or something, you had more shows than in the last year in 1 week. It was crazy.
No, you know what was funny? It was effects from the corona. I shot from corona. I had all the symptoms except breathing and the taste thing. Everything else, yeah, I had all the symptoms except 2.
Wow. Thank you for doing the Saturday show. I know the audience absolutely loves that time. That's your time with your audience. You guys have, there's a special bond there now. I mean, I even recognize that when I tune in from work. So I know you weren't feeling well. So thank you for doing that for everyone.
Yeah.
Saturday night wouldn't be the same without it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, I shared the video of what I just, I posted it on, all 3 on Para Awakening, Live Paranormal, and Para Awakening on YouTube. So, if you want to watch that video, it'll kind of give you the breakdown or just comparisons of the 3 or the 4 sweep speeds. And honestly, still, I'm still a fan of 150. I mean, 200 it works, but there's still, you'll get more full sentences on shorter or at a faster sweep speed, believe it or not.
Right. Yeah, that is interesting. And when you pointed that out to me, I recognize that as well. I mean, I could listen to 200. It's not unlistenable. It's still intelligible communication. It's still very clear. It's very easy to listen to. But yeah, I did notice 150 to 160, there seems to be a cadence or a rhythm that you found. And that's how I could describe it as a musician or audio engineer. There was a specific cadence, like almost like a metronome kind of ticking in the background. And it just clocks in the perfect amount of communication for phrases and sentences. And the longer you've been doing this, because I'll go back and check out a Saturday show just to listen to it. I could be folding laundry. I just want to listen to it in the background. And you can hear every week you're getting more concurrent words and phrases back to back and sentences. I mean, you can literally hear them trying to form 7, 8, or 9 word sentences. It's really incredible. And at first, I was always, as you know, Rob, a proponent of forward. I liked linear forward random. I just was a proponent of that, and I've always enjoyed that. The more I've listened to your sessions, and again, I've had experience with Steve and Katie's stream in the past as well. It just blows my mind how clear and consistent the reverse communication, or communication coming through reverse speech is. It's fascinating.
No, I totally agree. And Katie, no, I'm not negating the operator either.
True.
I think that has a lot to do with it. Honestly, I don't think it's just the radio itself either. I think a lot of it has to do with us. I think a lot of it has to do with, honestly, I think Matt hit the nail on the head when it said the mind.
Yeah.
When he was talking about the mind, I think that has a huge part of it. I don't think it's the radio itself per se. I think there's more to it than that.
And that is, it appears that's what we're finding that there's consistency in their ability to communicate with whatever means we can give them that's suitable. And we're also finding that so much depends on us. You know, why are certain people getting certain communication than others? Some of it's more frequent than others. Some of it's of a better quality than others. And so when you really consider, well, we're all using the SV7 radio, or, you know, this mass-produced radio, but everyone's getting different results, you really have to consider the other variables. What else is going on? And one of our good mutual friends, Rob, Tim Woolworth, in his theory and in his website and over his years of research, he has really come to the conclusion, I don't want to say conclusion, but he's really stressed the importance of our own energy and the operator as a variable. And when we say ITC operator or ITC practitioner, it is just that. You are practicing something. You are honing in on a skill. You are trying to perfect something that is lending towards communication. We don't know exactly what that is, but we describe that as energy, as concentration, as intent. And that really seems to play a big factor in this communication. And I can tell you this, Rob, you and I, running your box, your reverse box, on average, and follow me here, we will probably get less communication than you do with your entire Saturday show, because there's so many people concentrating and putting energy and intent into those shows. The communication on your Saturday shows is unbelievable. It just doesn't stop, and it just keeps coming in more and more.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I can do the same session during the day, which sometimes I do. I leave my radio on just for background noise, because I always have to have some type of background noise, whether it's a radio playing, whether it's a TV on. Sometimes I'm tired of listening to the radio, tired of listening to music, so I just throw it on just as noise. And I won't hear a single thing come through. I mean, seriously, there's nothing coming through.
Right.
But then I'll do the same, type of box session on Saturday, and it's nonstop. It doesn't shut up. I mean, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying it's just overwhelming. Like,
yeah,
okay, this, why am I getting so much communication now? I talked to a friend of mine who's a psychic, and she was the one that was, because she called me on Saturday. She wanted to talk to me about using the ghost box. She's going to be doing some police work, and she talked about doing some ITC research using maybe one of my boxes. And I told her, you know what? It's not a good idea. Just to use one of my boxes during an investigation when you're trying to get some things coming through. Just not because I didn't want to give her one of my boxes. It's just, it's like what we're talking about, being in tune with a piece of equipment.
Right.
She wanted to use it like immediately, and I said,
Right.
it's no, just because she's not in tune with that device yet. And it takes time. It's not like, here, take one of my boxes, go run with it, go investigate with it.
Right.
No, it's going to take some time, some work.
Sure.
And that's why, because I didn't want to give her false hope.
Right.
Because she sees the responses that I'm getting. She sees the work that I do. She sees, during my sessions on what happens. And I couldn't guarantee that was going to happen. And I explained that to her. So I said, I don't think it's a good idea. If you had the box for a while and then you were going to do this, I would say go for it. But right now, no.
And it's just like anything else in life. If you want to become a musician or learn to hit a fastball pitch with a baseball bat, you've got to practice. And a lot of people want to jump in the batter's box right away and swing after that 95 mile per hour fastball. And you just can't. And ITC is a lot of the same way. It takes time to build up a contact field, relationship, communication. It takes time to, practice your body calming down and relaxing and focusing intent. And again, I use your Saturday shows as an example. When someone new comes in, you have your regular audience, your group, which I love, and they're getting so good at hearing these responses. They're better than I am at this point. But I watch you guys conduct these sessions from work, and then I see someone new come in and they say, what's going on? What are we listening to? I don't hear anything. You people are crazy. But that's the initial response until you stay for a while and start to pick up on what's going on, and you start to hone in your hearing and your concentration. And that, I like the advice that you gave your psychic friend, is I can't just give you this box and expect for you to go out on location and immediately just start picking up information. And it goes back to the operator being a big variable. She hasn't developed, maybe now as a psychic, she probably has a contact field. I don't want to misspeak here, but with the equipment and the way the communication's coming through the equipment, it just doesn't happen overnight. It's something that takes a lot of tireless work and time. And your audience has put in that time, and they're hearing responses so fast and responding so quickly. Just kudos to the Saturday audience. Seriously, I'm just so impressed. I'd like to have you guys review some of my work, because you're probably better at hearing it than I am now at this point. But it does take time.
No, and I'm very proud of people that have honed in on their skills on doing ITC sessions, or ghost box sessions, because it's not easy.
No, it's not.
It's really not easy. And it's funny because now I have them so spoiled, they listen to other boxes and things like that. They're like, I can't do it. I just can't.
Once you drive the Porsche GT3 RS, you don't go back to your daily driver. You have spoiled the audience, Rob. And a lot of these people have jumped into ghost boxing, like getting very good, clear technology. I mean, you and I started on stuff that would just give people headaches and make you bleed out of your ears. It was so noisy.
No, it's crazy. And I'm not tooting my own horn. That's not what it's about.
I'll pat your back. I'll pat your back. That's what we do.
I'm just saying that, for me, I mean, I get ear fatigue really easy now. I think just because of the type of work that I do also, and just there's a lot of things that I do that I have to do, and I've gotten very spoiled to where if something's too noisy, I just can't listen. I can't. It's just like me trying to listen into, I got spoiled listening to, certain devices that I listen to music on. And now I think I become an audiophile.
Right.
When you become an audiophile, you hear, it's like going from vinyl to CDs. It's like, oh my God, and people can't say that they can't hear the difference. And it's true. It's like when you were talking about a Marantz, that's like somebody listening to a Marantz receiver, and then you listen to a Macintosh receiver. Once you get spoiled on that Macintosh receiver, good luck going back.
And that's MCINTOSH, not Macintosh Apple.
Not Apple Macintosh.
Right. Macintosh, right. No, and you're right. And Kanga Blue says, and I know Kanga's in your Saturday audience, right, Rob? And says, I admit other boxes are much harder to hear now. I'm used to hearing yours.
But it's just, you know, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it. There are so many variables. That's the bottom line. We're learning the ITC operator is a variable, and we're learning the equipment you use is also a variable. Certain radios will get certain communication than others. It's not consistent. So when a lot of us talk about, oh, we hear this, it could be on particular types of radio or radio receivers or different types of chips or circuits. So there's still so many variables and so many combinations of operators using different radios or learning to adapt to different radios. But I couldn't imagine, Rob, coming into this, jumping into your show with what you've provided. Because you and I will just say this, you and I have been through the trenches with, I mean, we've lost hearing and we've had tinnitus for a day or so, listening to radios with so much static at such a high volume for periods of time that I listen to your equipment and I'm it's such an easy listening experience. There's no ear fatigue. I can go for a long time getting responses.
And that's the thing. I mean, for me to be able to go 5 hours doing it, at first it wasn't easy. I'm going to tell you that right now.
5 hours is a long time.
But I've gotten so spoiled. And my audience has suffered through it also because I'm switching out audio devices so often that something breaks and nothing really changed. But yes, it did. On the back end, it did. It's just something when you're using, like we said, when you're using virtual devices, it breaks.
Yeah, it does.
You don't anticipate that. All of a sudden, audio is working and then audio stops. Audio is working and then it stops.
Right.
Or you're just not getting that feed and it says, no, it is working. No, it's that feed's broken. Right. It's just that hardware can't handle it. So then I have to switch back to something. So yes, I'm sorry to the audience that went through my growing pains, but I have it all mastered now. So let's just hope the new hardware comes in and we're up and running. Or I go back to using what I'm doing right now.
And that's possible too, and it's working. But you know, we do have a plan. And Rob, obviously, your audio rack comes first. You're driving the live paranormal ship. So settle that, get that worked out. And then when we can, we're going to start improving on our experiments however we can. Obviously, there'll be so much trial and error, but we've got the live video feedback loop method. We've got the strobe lights. So hopefully we'll be able to bring that live, because, you know, that's something that people only do upon review because it's so time consuming. Maybe we can provide that live.
I know. And you know, I'm kind of hesitant to that because I don't know how many people would be sensitive to that and are prone to seizures.
Ooh, that's a really good point, Rob.
So I don't know.
You know what? You know what, Rob? I can't believe I didn't think about that. You're right. Because as amazing as the evidence would be and what we could capture in the way that you want to do it, yeah, that could be a major problem. See,
I mean, we could possibly do a fog machine with that, but even then, I'd still need a strobe, and the strobe is the biggest factor.
Right. And we'll have to flush this out. And Dawn says, why not try a smoke machine? And there's probably a few different ways. And thank you, Dawn. This is the brainstorming we need. And we love when the audience participates. We'll have to flush this stuff out to make sure we're not, you know, giving anyone a serious epileptic seizure while we're trying to do live feedback, video loop method. Yeah, we've got to figure this out. But I think your new equipment coming up will lead us toward the next push of providing this somehow streaming. I don't know how yet, but we'll get that figured out. Illegally Blonde says, I'll bring mushrooms. We'll have a blast. Well, I don't know if that's ITC research. It might be. It could be. I don't know.
Oh, no, it could be.
I guess.
I mean, you're putting yourself at a at an altered mind state, which is actually good. I've talked about going on investigation stoned, and I've done it just to put myself in an altered state.
Okay.
Just to see if it. And this is when when I was first getting into testing my abilities, I want to say. I went to a location that I've been to on several occasions where I talked to somebody and they said, "Have you ever tried to go into that location with an altered state?" And I said, "No." And so we did. And it was amazing. I mean, there was things that I was feeling, and there were other people there. So basically, I was just using my abilities, and they were documenting everything, and I was in an altered state. But my senses were so enhanced or heightened that I was picking up on things, and then I was like, "Wait, did you hear that voice coming from over there?" And they were like, "Dude, you even heard that?" And you're like stoned out of your mind.
Wow.
And I said, "Yeah, no, I'm picking up on a lot of things." And I said, "There's footsteps coming from upstairs." They're like, "What are you talking about?" Then they were like, everybody just shut up. And then they were like, "That's coming from like 2 rooms back. How in the hell did you hear that?" And
Wow.
yeah, there was somebody saw a shadow figure from outside on where I just said. So there was a lot of things that were that I was experiencing, and other people were picking up on that.
Wow.
So yeah, it was pretty crazy.
You know, that is crazy. I know of someone, a friend of a friend, who now does their investigations, which I don't agree with, but they actually take DMT before they go on their investigations. And
Wow.
I
It's the same thing.
It is the same thing. But I'm not one to speak. I don't have experience in this. Who am I to say what you do or don't do in an investigation? I'm just one person with an opinion, but I mean, hearing what that does to people, I don't know how aware you can be of your immediate surroundings when you're astral traveling, a gazillion miles away and meeting frog lizard people who are handing you lollipops and telling you the secrets to, some astral plane. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how in the moment you can be where you currently are, but I guess, I guess if that helps, maybe somehow taking DMT on an investigation, you can come in personal contact with the spirits or entities of that location without needing equipment. I don't know, but apparently this is something that this person likes to do.
I mean, and I've done it twice. Do I recommend people to do it? No, but I just did it twice as an experiment, and both times was what I was getting and what other people were picking up, or when I was telling people, "Oh, you need to run over here and go stand over there for a few minutes and just sit there with your recorder and see if you get anything." And they picked up, their EVPs were coming out just like, they were like, "Dude, how in the hell are you pointing us to go to certain areas and stand there and
Really?
look at what I'm coming back with?" And it was just crazy.
And this was on DMT or hallucinogen?
This was just smoking pot.
Okay. And so you were able to detect or sense these things. Your perceptions were more in tune with the environment, and you could actually.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. That is interesting. And you know what? So, and how has that been? I would imagine, is this too taboo for ITC? Is changing or altering your state of mind?
I think people frown upon it because they're changing you're altering your mind. But you think, okay, but you if you would, okay, because of my heritage, because I'm French and Indian, with a Hispanic surname, but my heritage is French and Indian.
Right.
Anyway, So my ancestors would, take peyote to do, vision quests.
Right.
What's the difference? It's the same thing. They would put themselves in alter mind to have a vision quest.
Right.
And I've had visions before. That's basically, astral traveling and things like that. So me picking up on things that happened in the past, before I was even born, and explain that to somebody, and they're just like, wait, what? It's just things that have happened. So, that's why, since I was really sensitive anyway, I said, you know what, let me put myself in an altered state and see if that enhances my abilities. Right. And that's why I did it. I did that experiment twice, and the outcome was exactly what I thought. It did enhance my abilities.
And see, this is interesting, is because, again, in ITC, we're so focused on, especially in my hyper-focused field with audio and audio-based ITC, we're so hyper-focused on the equipment, on the technology, on whatever it is we're currently working on, or projects that, like we learned from Matt this evening, so much is based on the ITC operator and so many variables. And now you're testifying to this expanding your awareness or consciousness of possibly another dimension, or entities or spirits or beings that are around that maybe you wouldn't have picked up without altering your state of consciousness or state of mind, regardless of the equipment you're using. And that's fascinating. And I feel like while I might not be a test subject for something like this, I would be interested in finding out what other people have experienced, like yourself. I mean, that's really interesting, and how it can lend towards.
But as long, and I don't know why, people have frowned upon it. I just don't. I don't know. I think because maybe just people are closed-minded to it. But that's what, if you ever watch a psychic when they go into a mental trance, mm-hmm. and they're kind of doing, some type of scrying, or they're doing some type of reading during a seance, they're almost in an altered state. They put themselves in an altered state,
right,
mentally. Mm-hmm. So it's basically the same thing. They're just not using anything to alter that, but it, but whatever works for that individual, I don't see any problem with it.
No, and again, we don't, I certainly don't have the experience to say what's a better best practice or not. And who am I to judge who does what on a paranormal investigation? I don't write the rule book. I don't make the rules. So, but I find it very fascinating and interesting that some people I know are taking up this practice to some controlled degree. It's not a party, but they're controlling their intake, and they're continuing these investigations, and they're reporting similar findings to what you're reporting, is that mm-hmm. I am becoming more aware, and I didn't need the equipment. I became my own receptor, if you will, for the communication or the interaction with whatever that is that we're interacting with. And I find that really fascinating.
No, and I mean, like I've said, yes, I haven't shown it, haven't shown anything, but, that's why a lot of people are like, how in the hell do you capture all this evidence? How are you able to capture all of this on film? And it's like, because I go by my intuition. When I go into a location, I clear my thoughts. I clear everything. I don't just sit there and say, oh yeah, look I'm on an investigation doing this, doing that, whatever. I'm constantly just in a state of mind that I just release everything. And then I just could feel basically I almost read like the building. It's weird. I just read the environment and feel the environment. And there's times when I was like, there's nothing here. There is absolutely nothing here. And I'll walk around, walk in every single closet, walk in every single room, walk every single inch of that building. And I'm like, there is nothing here. And then I'm like, I'm going outside to smoke. At that time I was smoking. I would sit outside and just sit out there and smoke. And they're like, dude, aren't you coming back in? No, I'm enjoying the environment outside. I'm just chilling. And then, hours later, everybody comes out. Oh, what did you guys get? Nothing. Did you guys get any EVPs? No. Did you get this? No. Did you guys hear anything? No. I was like, I was done hours ago.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? So it's, but.
Well, I think it's something we need to examine further. I mean, if this is the Paranormal and ITC podcast, then nothing's off the table. I mean,
no,
literally
exactly.
in the definition of what we're doing. I mean, we're using broken radios and equipment to scan the EM spectrum to find out what communication's coming in. I mean, really, when you think about it that way, everything is open for interpretation. I mean, really everything has to be tried to some extent. And I think we need to consider this, especially in our discussions and moving forward, talk to people who've had these experiences, because it's not just about the equipment. Now, yes, ITC involves some type of instrumental transcommunication. So usually it's a device of some kind that's facilitating that. But at the same time, in terms of paranormal realm, who are we to say that, again, someone taking DMT isn't making these connections without any of the equipment instantaneously? I mean, it appears like a lot of people are reporting successful investigations or finding out information later to finding out it's been proven true somehow. And we can bring those examples in, but we got to keep that on the list.
But, years ago, when people, this is before people, started using electronic or electrician tools, I should say,
Right.
in the paranormal field.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing that you would see, old school investigators, this is back, in the early 80s, in the 70s. I started in the late 80s, early 90s is when I started investigating.
Right.
So, I had a pencil, paper, a compass, and a camera that actually used film, and or a Polaroid camera, and a tape recorder,
Mm-hmm.
a literal tape recorder. And it actually had an external mic on it. I had an external mic, and I would just put it somewhere on the table and just sit it down and hit play and record and walk away. Or I'd ask questions. And that's basically the tools that we had. The compass was used as an EMF detector. Basically, if you saw that compass spinning, why is the compass spinning? And I've seen a compass spin like a top. I mean, it was literally spinning. What's causing that to spin? I have no clue. And then it would stop on a dime.
Yeah.
I mean, you would just see the needle just literally like spinning and then stop on a dime.
Yeah, the Earth's magnetic poles don't work like that. That's not how it works. I mean, unless you were in contact. I mean, depending on your location, there could be a few different explanations, but it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and I've seen that happen on many. But the bad thing at that time is nobody had a freaking video camera.
Right. Or you did. And
even unless you had a freaking shoulder, a VHS recorder,
right?
Which a lot of people didn't carry. People just carried a tape recorder. Like I said, I just gave you what 90% of the people out there had. I mean, some people just had not even that. They just had a camera or one of those little handheld recorders that used a micro cassette. And that was like, oh, wow, that's kind of cool because, none of us had that because that actually was newer technology.
Right. The micro cassette, of course. Yeah.
Micro cassette,
right.
Yeah, because we're just using old cassette tapes.
Right.
But when somebody else would come with a micro cassette recorder, oh, wow, that's new. That's cool.
Yeah.
And how does that record? And we'd listen to it and, get all excited and crazy. But no, it was just all about old school. But
yeah.
And then when somebody was really lucky, you'd go to somebody's house for a home investigation and they'd have a reel to reel. And that was a treat.
Those are fun to take care of.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, and the one that this person had was very expensive. For
Yes.
that, even for that time. But when it did pick up EVPs, it was amazing.
Yeah, and that's just it. Is the reel to reels are very difficult to take care of, to keep clean, to keep everything working, so there's no extra noise coming from the machine. But when you do capture something on magnetically on magnetic tape like that, and it's imprinted on the tape, it is fascinating. I didn't want to pass up Corey Price in the audience is mentioning that shamans have been using medicines, ayahuasca, since humans have been, walking on the planet. And you're absolutely right. And they have been, stories have come through our generation saying that these plant medicines, ayahuasca and different things, now DMT, are connecting people to the spirit realm, the astral realm, other dimensions, wherever it may be. Again, I don't know, but you're absolutely right. And I think we need to consider this going forward, because the mental state or the condition of the operator, I'll just say the operator for right now, is really so important. And there's so many variables still. And we talked with Matt tonight, the mind. He's picking up information about the mind being such a big part of this communication.
And this is why I brought that up. That's exactly why I brought it up, because the mind, you have to remember that a lot of the things that we're doing, everybody thinks, they don't think outside of the box. Everybody gets too tuned into, here we go again, to instant gratification. It's more than that, way more than that. And if people would go back to the basics and go back to how things used to be, talk to people that were investigating in the 70s, in the 80s, in the early 90s. Things started changing in about mid 90s. Things started changing.
Yeah, and in fact, at that time, popular science articles were becoming more proficient at discussing EVP and discussing white noise, and kind of it wasn't so taboo anymore to talk about white noise. I mean, if you brought that up in the 80s or 90s, even being a paranormal investigator, people were like, "Oh man, did you not take your medicine this morning? Like, did you escape from the local mental, asylum?" And now, and Rob, you have been investigating for a long time. Now you've even seen it's part of pop culture. I mean, it's literally embedded into our modern day culture. In fact, it's so embedded into our culture that my 7-year-old son and I, and my 3-year-old son, were watching Paddington Bear. Are you familiar with the cartoon Paddington Bear?
Yep.
There is an episode where Paddington and the two children have a radio, and Paddington swears that the radio is communicating with aliens. This is a children's show. This is a children's show. Okay. This is a cartoon. And I'm not kidding. Look it up. Paddington and the two children are sitting in the treehouse around a radio. And Paddington says, "See, there it is. They're talking to us again. Guys, this is a children's show. This is Paddington Bear." And that's how much now what we're doing is almost embedded in pop culture. I mean, our own government just released files about UFOs, about UAPs. And so a lot of these things are becoming more accepted to some degree, and it's not so uncommon anymore.
Yeah. And the funny thing is during the early, early 90s, late 80s, there wasn't a lot of people ghost hunting at that time. The community was very, very small. I was talking to a couple of people that were local. They were on TV quite often. You would always see the same people on TV.
Right.
There was a parapsychology department at UCLA. So you talk to some of them about certain cases, some of the things that you would experiment with. You would, pick up the phone, you talk to them, and you get to know them. And so the community was very, very small.
Right.
But locations were freaking abundant anywhere. I mean, you can get in anywhere you wanted, pretty much.
Right.
There was ways to get in, and by talking to them, and you didn't have to pay any money. You'd give them maybe a $25 donation toward to the location, whatever. You'd drop it in the donation box. So places were very easy to get in. There wasn't a lot of, it wasn't saturated. There was a lot of things that you would share your information. Then you would compare your experiences with other people, and you would share your documentation of what you captured and started comparing notes. And so there was a lot of people documenting a lot of things that were going on. So you saw things being documented at an early stage. So you see where it was then and you see where it's at now. And, you hear the same stories because you know where the story originated from. There's stories on the Queen Mary that originated back in the 80s. And I said, yeah, I know the person that, that experienced that. Wow. And then somebody was telling a story on a tour that I went on a few years ago, something that I experienced back in 91, I think, on the ship, and they're still telling that story. So it's just funny how certain things, you talk about, or certain things that people experience, and you're like, yeah, I know who that was. Right. So it's just funny how things just happen. But anyway, I just wish the field would get back to that period of time, which it never would. But I just wish that there were people that thought that way on how old school investigators investigated, opposed to where it is now.
Yeah, I mean, just the mentality, and I use, pardon the pun, spirit, but everyone's spirit in general, motivation was more towards true research and really understanding that you have to work together to really understand what's going on. The phenomena is bigger than any one person. It's really about working together. Again, that's what I love about your Saturday show. It's just a collective group that meets every Saturday, and you guys are working together. But
exactly, and that's exactly it. It's I just love the Saturday show. Yeah. And the Saturday show, I mean, the numbers are just, and it's not about numbers. I love seeing new people come in.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you'll see a new person come in, and then you'll see them the next week, then you'll see them the next week, and then they become a regular. Right. So it's just more and more people happening that's happening to more often, that it's just incredible. Right. And I'm trying to keep it real. I'm trying to keep it organic as I can.
Right. Well, I don't know that your audience of your Saturday show know that there are people watching that aren't making themselves known, that are watching the progress of the Saturday night show. I mean, I don't think your audience knows that they're there because they're fascinated, but they're also, your show's being monitored. I mean, the success of the show and the communication that's coming in is turning a lot of heads. People that aren't going to come out in the public and go, okay, what's going on here? There are parapsychologists that have watched the show. I have a friend who's one, and you have one, who have watched it and went, this kind of blows my whole theory of the last 30 years out of the water. What's going on here? So audience that is here tonight, that's on your Saturday show, they're part of a larger experiment. They may or may not realize it, in the sense that, this is fascinating. This is fascinating evidence that's being documented the same time, week after week, for hours at a time, with reverse speech. This is really important. I don't think people realize this is on YouTube. This is forever. And they're a part of this history, because I really believe that everyone in the community is doing their part. But you and the Saturday show are definitely doing your part. I'll definitely say that.
When I started finding out more that this was happening, more and more people were kind of staying in the shadows.
Right.
Per se.
Yeah, we know a few.
They're staying in the shadows and not making themselves known. And then it's getting back to you about that. It's like, wait, what? Are you serious? It's like, it means a lot. it's like a huge surprise, and it's like, wow, so this work is actually paying off, because it's like what you're saying. There's people out there that aren't making it known, but it's getting out there that it's a big thing that's going on. And then when I'm finding out who's watching and who's watching from the shadows, I'm just like mind blown. I'm like, are you serious right now? Wow.
Just keep your head down and just keep moving forward.
No,
Don't just keep moving forward, Rob. Don't stop these Saturday shows, please.
No. And that's what just makes it keep on going.
Yeah. No,
I was thinking about changing the time up, or maybe changing the day, just so I can at least have a weekend. Maybe changing it to Friday nights, but I don't know. It's something that's in going to every other week, but it's something that I'm thinking about. I don't know yet.
Okay. Well, at any rate, I really believe that those weekly sessions should continue at somehow. And I think their importance are, I look at the other live streams that are going on in the community, and they're all important. They're all contributing in a very impressive way. But your Saturday show is the one show especially from work, I don't miss. And even if I'm working with someone else, or there's my manager's there, I've got it in an earpiece. I've got the phone in my pocket. It's something now that I can't even not listen to, just because of the responses and the quantity and the quality. It just increases every single week. Very impressive.
Yeah. No, and thank you for that. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. It's just a lot of work, I know.
Yes, it is.
It is a lot of work. But you know what? It's just going to get better. I will make it get better. I'm just doing it. It's all in the, for research. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Right. And it's going to pay off in terms of the looking back and how this has progressed and how the audience has grown and how the audience just hears things. I mean, your audience is hearing things faster than I am. I mean, really, and maybe I'm just getting older, but I just can't believe how attuned all of you are together into the communication that's coming in. And it's fascinating to watch. I mean, I'm beyond now. Okay, yeah, the communication's coming in, it's intelligent. I'm more impressed about how many people are joining in and so passionate about this and are just, lining up to get the chance to hear this. And that's why I think the show is going to grow. And I think of recent history or memory, I can't think of a live stream that's had so much audience interaction that's capturing the attention of the scientific community, that's capturing the attention of people. I'll stop there. You're getting people's attention, so please keep going.
No, I am. I haven't heard anybody's. I mean, I've had some people ask me, "How in the hell are you getting your audio so clear over the internet?"
I get asked that a lot about your setup. Yes.
Because I've heard other people's ghost box sessions over the internet. I can't even understand. I don't even know if there's any communication coming through. All I'm hearing is a sweep. I'm not hearing any responses. And if there are responses coming through, they're so garbled I can't understand what it's saying.
Right.
And I've even tried to listen through a playback, and I still can't understand what's coming through without having annotations.
I think the right people are picking up on that. Definitely. And I think that's why I'm pushing you to try and further your box and or continue your research. I know you have a lot on your plate, but I think you and your Saturday show group are making progress in a way that hasn't been repeated so successfully and so consistently week after week. You have the same people coming back. I mean, even the people in the show and the audience are coming back. Those variables are fixed. I mean, so it's one of the largest, in my opinion, controlled as best as you can, controlled environments that's involving people from around the world in different time zones that are coming back week after week. I mean, it's very impressive. Very impressive.
Yeah, and this is, as like I said, and this is something that you missed out on when Matt and I first started talking.
Right.
He was impressed on, and that's I think where he might have gotten the idea of he's never thought about doing a controlled environment box session until he saw my session. Right. So that gave him that idea to do some controlled environment box session.
Right.
Which is not easy to do because there's so many different variables. And I told him, like, the area that I live in, reception here sucks. You get maybe 4, maybe 5 stations. That's it. So for me to, having to tap onto a ground, onto the house ground wiring, and then to me to run a cable from that ground to a radio so I can use that ground to pick up radio. That was dedication. A feat in itself.
Right. That's dedication.
Without having a massive antenna in here.
Right. Well, that's next, Rob. I'm just going to show up with my truck one day and it's just going to be a massive antenna and satellite dish in the back.
Well, but I mean, an FM antenna can only be a certain length or whatever type of antenna you're trying to, shortwave, it has to be, 13 inches, or I forget the exact math. There's so much math that you have to put behind it.
I'm talking about the cone antennas that NASA uses that have to be angled properly to shoot out beyond the mesosphere into outer space. We're hooking up. I mean, I want to find out what's going on light years ahead of here. I mean, we're going to reach well into the universe with the antennas I'm going to be bringing over. We have to. That's just the next step.
Yeah, you're going to see a freaking a ham radio antenna sticking out of my roof here soon. It's just crazy. I mean, now I want to do some shortwave. There's so much experimentations that
long wave, shortwave. Yeah,
there's so many experiments that I want to try, and that's basically I'm taken away from that because I just can't. I don't have the time.
Well,
unless I do it on Saturday, but even then, to just get everything dialed in to have that done, it still needs to, take some time to set up. And that's why I need to take a step away from box building for a little while, at least. So I could just get caught up doing that. And then maybe in a few months down the road, whatever, then I'll build some more boxes. But as of right now, I'm not going to build any for a little while. I mean, I'll finish up my last box and then work on a couple other things for now.
Exactly. And again, and your audience will remind you, keep the Saturday shows going. I know you've got a lot on your plate. If I can help relieve some of that, even some of the boring back end stuff, like getting the Behringer mixing or set, whatever, so you can keep proceeding forward in what you're doing. I mean, let me know or
dude, I'm going to have you dial in and I'll give you access and just say here.
If I can remote mix your setup, I'll do it. Absolutely. I mean, I'm also 20 minutes away. I could probably show up, but either way, let me know. So we can keep everything going, keep the audience integrated, participating, because they're such a big factor. You guys, you're such a big factor to our Wednesday show and the Saturday show and everything Rob's doing. I'm doing everything. I mean, you guys are 95% of this, really. Without you guys, it would just be Rob and I texting each other. Hey, did you hook up this satellite? Oh, no, I hooked up this antenna. Oh, great. Let's hang out and listen to broken radios. I mean, we're not going to get anywhere without you guys. It's all about you guys. So thank you so much, really.
Yeah, no, exactly. You guys are like the backbone of this, of these productions. So, Friday and Saturday's productions of last week were, oh my God, I'm just afraid of me getting a call on Thursday. Hey, we're doing another live tomorrow. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, you're busy.
Right now I can't. I'll be like, literally, I can't right now. I'm literally down right now.
We'll get you back up. Somehow we'll get you back up.
I'm just using this little Zoom interface right now, actually recorder or podcast recorder, whatever it is.
We'll get you back up. It's going to work out. It'll work out.
It's weird not having a mixer on my desk. I'm like feel naked.
Yeah, you need to get a mixer. You do.
It'll be back. I took back that Mackie yesterday.
Well,
It was either I take it back or I'm stuck with it. So I don't need another Mackie sitting here who just been collecting dust.
right.
I'm moving up and onward.
Upward and onward with everything, with experiments and everything. The show will just keep improving the best way we can. But, well, what do you say, Rob? It's top of the hour. We've been on for 3 hours.
All right, we're going to cut it. Sorry, we're ranting, raving. Go smoke some pot and let's get some mind altering experiences going.
I'm so glad you said that for the special people that are listening. That's fantastic.
So don't be surprised if you tune in on Saturday that you see me doing some bong rips and then doing some ghost box sessions.
God, there goes our validity. Okay. There goes our credibility right out the window. All this work, all these years, just one bong rip, up, show's over. See you guys. Oh, goodness. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you. I know it's late, wherever you are around the world. Thank you for your time, your attention, your energy. It means everything to us. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody, and have a great weekend. See you guys Saturday.
And see you next Wednesday.
Yep.